Welcome to Chew the Chat Podcast.
Because what are we on now? We're on 50. This is 50. I think we're on 55 episodes, something like that.
Is that many done? 55.
And we were only on it was the end of January when this started.
Last year, yeah.
Very end of January last year.
Yeah.
About the same time that the whispers came in about the inevitable year we've had, which didn't seem inevitable at the time. It just, so we are kind of a pandemic podcast.
Yeah.
We've kind of chronicled it. So week to week, you go back and talking to everybody and all the different stages, as you mentioned a minute ago, this announcement, it's going to be 2 weeks and then, whoa, hang on.
Yeah.
Everybody's reactions are different.
Yeah. It sort of feels in some ways that we haven't really changed, or we've been stuck on almost a loop of a year that's just continually gone round and round, and I don't think anyone would have conceived this time. I mean, it's a year today, isn't it, because it's my birthday on Thursday, and it was a year today it all kicked off in terms of policy, and it still feels like, well, we're still in the same scenario, and you would never have envisaged a year ago that you would still be in this place, because it was supposed to be 3 weeks, 6 weeks, squash the sombrero, all that sort of Boris language, and everyone sort of bought into it and thought, yeah, all right, I'll do it for 3 or 4 weeks. It's not going to kill me. And at the time, I guess there was a lot of uncertainty and maybe naivety around what was in store, what the virus was about, whether it was, exaggerated, whether it was real. Do you know what I mean? So people just thought, yeah, okay, we'll give it a try. It's an experiment almost, really, isn't it? But to fathom that in your head, to say, to have said to yourself a year ago, yeah, I can do this for a year. No way, no one would have ever done it. It would never have happened, would it? There would have probably been disruption at some point, much earlier than we're starting to see a little bit of now across, the UK and Europe have been doing it for a while. But it's kind of like they had to do it that way in order to sort of nudge people into.
Well, it's called that, the actual behavioural insights
nudge
booklet.
Unit, I think.
The nudge unit, or the green nudge, little green nudge. Yeah, it's a year, and it's gone so quickly as well this year for me. Anyway,
that's true.
It seems to have happened so quickly.
Why is that, do you think?
I can only think because it's just been so surreal, so out of the ordinary, so otherworldly. I honestly think there's times when I felt like, fucking hell, I'm a fan of Black Mirror,
Dystopia and...
Yeah, and impending technology and what does the future look like, and always, Charlie Brooker's always seemed to be pretty close as you look back across the seasons of Black Mirror. He's always in that kind of, in that thin layer just in front. And there's times when I've thought, fucking hell, this is like... I mean, I just put a little video out the other week. There's a clip in last week's podcast with Jane Martin.
Yes, she's my neighbour. She was my neighbour. Do you know that?
That's right. Yeah, I do. Yeah.
For a while, I think she still owns a house. I'm not sure. That I find that fascinating because we were sort of. She came not for that long. She'd been out. I knew she'd been in Asia for a while, and when they moved, we sort of exchanged pleasantries as you do as neighbours, and there was minimal. There was sort of the friendly
as you used to do, Steve. You don't anymore.
As you used to do back in
got a mask
in the day.
Get away.
When you used to talk to people and shake hands and kiss them on the cheek. Well, we didn't go that far, but it was kind of like that low level conversation you have with your neighbour. And when I saw her on the show, I thought, well, that's fascinating because in some ways. It may be a product of our time that we don't sort of. I think community and neighbourhoods maybe don't connect as much as they used to, and whether that's a technological thing or a anthropological thing or whatever, I don't know. It's just I'm not going to think about that too much or go down that rabbit hole. But I just, we don't sort of
share.
We don't share and sort of just do. We almost just do the tick in the box now. Of hello, morning.
Yeah.
How's it going? Same old question. You all right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the day goes on, and to hear people's life stories and how they've completely shifted from, one sort of career to another, and they've gone down this kind of totally different route through personal experience. I just found that fascinating, really. I just think, well, you really don't know people until you crack the tin open and spend a bit of time with them. Maybe over a beer like we are.
Yeah. Cheers. I'm going to introduce you at this point.
Thank you.
I'm going to call you Mr. Steve Crome. one half of Andrenachrome, which we're going to get into.
Yes.
Down the middle camera. That is people who follow the podcast, who've watched the podcast, heard the podcast. I've played Andrenachrome songs. They know who you are by third person, Steve. We've got a history of making music together, trying to express all this madness through our creativity, I guess you would call it. It's a pleasure to have you, sir. Thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
No, not at all, man. I've wanted to do this for a while. We've had a fun old time of Andrenachrome.
Yes.
How long has it been, Steve? How did and tell you what? Yeah, you give us, because Andrenachrome's your baby. You kind of brought me in on Andrenachrome. You've been, for listeners and viewers, you've been making music, and of all sorts and guises, from a DJ through guitar, traditional crafting songs, digital music, analog music, Moogs, you name it, you play it, you express it, you write it. And when Andrenachrome came along, you thought about me to just do some singing, and I got involved. And give us a bit of a backstory on your musical career. How did you arrive at it?
It's hard to know when it first came around. I think it's, for me, music's always been a part of me. It's always been my life. It's just from a kid listening to music. I've always been a music fan, I guess. And if you're a music fan, you sort of may end up going into music, especially if you start playing an instrument. The two worlds will eventually probably collide at some point. I always had music in my life. My parents played it all the time. Some of my wider family were in bands. Used to come round to my dad's house, play instruments. It was kind of the currency of the family, really. It sort of just was there, and I never thought much about it. And I think it was my dad who kind of got me into playing an instrument. He played guitar. He wasn't, technically brilliant, but he learned to play himself. And I listened to him as a kid growing up. And my godfather used to come round, and they used to play very folk American songbook together. And I think that sounds fantastic. I want a bit of that, really, I think. So it sort of went down that direction, really. My dad got me a guitar. He actually had a spare one, so I sort of banged around with that for a while. I was getting nowhere.
We all know that feeling.
Well, yeah, it was frustrating because, the thing is, I was trying to learn left-handed because I'm a left hooker, and he said, I can't teach you because everything's upside down, And there's only a few, Hendrix was left-handed, he did all right, but there was no way I was going there. So I ended up smashing the guitar in frustration. I just lost it. Now that was, I think I was about 12, 13, maybe when that happened. And then a couple of years later, I thought, no, I'll give it another crack. And then I switched over and started to play right-handed. Found it just naturally more, just easier for me, because you could watch other people play and you knew exactly where they were on the fretboard. You could start pick out chords. That was when I was about 14, and so I ended up going into more. Around that time, I listened to anything. I wouldn't say anything was off limits. I've never really sort of gone into trend, but I sort of moved. That was when I was about 15, 16, and then back end of the 80s, I was hearing a lot of electronic music around that time. Was kind of coming mainstream, I'm not going to sort of cite many influences mainly. But I do remember a real close schoolmate of mine, Cobby, who's he was quite diverse in his taste for his, for a guy you would never, an unassuming guy really, never sort of proclaim to be, a sort of musical Svengali. He just had a good taste in music. He came round one day to my house with a pile of New Order records. It was about this big, and he just said, "You might like these. Give this band a try." And I thought, okay, I'll give it a spin. And I just slowly spent some time with it, and I just found myself thinking, yeah, I like this. It's the main thing that comes over to me is I'm getting lost in all this electronic sort of lands. I know it sounds pretentious, but I didn't really listen to Barney Summers. I was listening to what was going on in the background with all the sort of sequencing and synths. I didn't even know what they were.
The layers. It all starts to melt, doesn't it?
Yeah. I just found it really, it just took me to somewhere completely different, took me away. It was sort of an out-of-body experience, I suppose. So I thought, yeah, I'm into this New Order sort of sound, and I kind of leaped from that into other electronic-y things, but never really sort of said I was into electronic music. I don't know what it was. It was just there amongst other stuff I was listening to. So, and then I guess along the late 80s, turn of the century to 90s, I started really listening to Jeff Young's Big Beat on Friday night, which is pre Pete Tong.
Right. Okay.
And he was kind of like playing. It was like that. I don't even know what they called it then. It was like acid house, and he was playing that, but he was also playing a lot of sort of funk and hip hop from the 80s, and he was smashing it all together. And I sort of cottoned onto it, but then he started changing it, and it started to become more Balearic house and stuff they were playing out in Ibiza and at these kind of free big raves, out in the sort of suburbs of London, and I thought, yeah, this is I've never heard anything like this before. And I did go to Ibiza in '89, totally oblivious to that scene, and it was just starting to. You could see there was like S Paradise was there, and we went there, but it wasn't playing. It was nothing like it is now. They were just starting to play like Lil Louis, French Kiss, and sort of. But there was sort of more charty, mainstream electronic music, house, alongside Happy Mondays, Stone Roses. It was all smashed together. So it was all sort of one scene, really. There was no sort of rave scene, indie scene. It was all kind of a big synergy of everything, And it was exciting. I just remember being really, really, really excited by it. I don't know why. I can't put my finger on it. It just felt like a little bit of a revolution,
Well, it was when from like here we can look back and see clearly it was, wasn't it?
I guess, at the time it
one of the
didn't,
biggest.
But looking back, yeah,
one of the biggest musical revolutions since the '60s, really. When you think about it,
I would agree with that.
Electronic music coming in, whether you love it or hate it, as an impact, as a movement. I mean, it's enormous. Enormous.
Yeah, and I think then it wasn't even classed as anything. It was just
a different thing.
It was just a different thing. It was
keyboards. There's keyboards everywhere.
Yeah, it was just kind of house music or
beat music.
Beat music, whatever anyone sort of decided to call it on the day, really. So over the sort of early 90s, the guitar went into the cupboard.
Could you get around the guitar at this point then?
Yeah, I was doing all right. I mean, I'd had lessons. I didn't stick at them. I thought I just need to learn what I want to learn, and then I'll do my own thing.
Did you learn theory then? Did you learn enough to know?
I'm musically dyslexic. I could not get theory into my head.
What, to this day, Steve?
No, I couldn't. I don't know why it won't go in. There's certain things I can grasp, but it was like I was rejecting it all the time. I don't know what that's about, but I gave up on that.
Yeah,
it's just a waste of time.
I'm trying now, during this time where we've had a lot of time. I've always thought, what, I need to if I can learn the basics about like scale or what notes are in a scale, if I can learn where I need to be on a guitar, probably like you. That's all I need, and then from there I can go off.
Yeah.
And I'm trying at the moment to do that, but yeah, it's tricky. It's really tricky. It's just like another language entirely to me.
It is another language. It's a musical language, obviously, but I couldn't speak it. I could only feel it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in a way I think I've learned that I'm quite a stubborn bastard sometimes. And to me, music theory was too academic for me. I thought that's for the boys in tuxedos, playing on the big the symphony orchestras.
Yeah.
Too pretentious for me. Sorry, I'm not having that.
Right.
I'm going to learn my own Steve theory, and
yeah, I like it.
This is a young lad talking, not me now. But
right.
This is kind of like I'm doing my own thing. If it's a chord, if it's a G9 major, whatever added ninth, I don't really give a shit. It's how it sounds to me, and that's what counts. Mm-hmm. And whether I'm trapping it right doesn't matter. It's my sort of personal
expression of it. Yeah.
So it was a little bit naive maybe now looking back on it. I wish I had sort of thought, no, that's a stupid idea. Just go and learn theory.
Well, but is it not then? So just to interject, because I've got this thing happening at the minute where I'm trying to tell myself, right, I want to learn a bit of theory. I want to at least have like a basic map. And this, I'm talking about being on the guitar here predominantly. Because I'm at a point where the little bits that I do know across the years of teaching myself and picking up chords and putting tunes together and melodies and picking out melodies, I've kind of exhausted everything. I think if I write any more songs with the same 6 chords that I've used for 20 fucking years, I'll go mad and never know anyone else. So I'm kind of at the point now, it's like, oh, right, well, if I just knew, like, to be able to change that scale or down tune that into something and make that, or there's this shape or there's that shape. But then a friend of mine said to me, like, what you've got is really cool, because what you're doing is like as what you're saying, it's through feel, it's through raw expression, and you're finding things that maybe the guy, like you say, in the tux who's classically trained would never go there because it's not correct to go there. So then you're quite limited. So it's just like somewhere if you've got enough knowledge to know the map, and then you're free enough to just go wherever you want, that's probably a good balance.
I think there's a lot of merit in that, and I think it's a personal journey and experience, right? You may come to you will come to a roadblock with any instrument. Well, in life, when you're learning, you'll get to a level, and suddenly you hit a wall, and you think, right, where do I go now? Either I put this instrument down and never touch it again because I've taken it as far as I can take it, or you challenge yourself to move past that wall. And that might be where you decide to consider taking some theory on, but it doesn't have to be grade 8.
Exactly.
You're going with the basics, and I kind of know my scales, and I know some of the theoretical stuff and modes, but I've never sat down and thought, right, I'm going to go into Phrygian mode, and it just doesn't compute that way for me. It's always been what do I feel like playing today?
Yeah.
Whereas for a lot of people I've spoken to who've come from it from a completely different perspective, they've come from the theory perspective. They are going to go, right, today I'm going to sit and write something in a minor 7th, and it's going to contain pens. It comes from a technical perspective, and that's how they approach it. And they may knock something out that is absolutely amazing. I don't know whether there's no way of comparing the two sort of outcomes, whether a person who's done theory can write a better melody than a person who's just feeling it. I think that would be interesting to.
So was there a point for you then? This is my own kind of I'm being intrigued here. Is there a point when you're jamming where you're kind of confident enough on your guitar at this point, and you're playing and when you get into a jam situation where you go in a room and someone's like, oh yeah, and they just start jamming, were you able to just drop on something? Could you work out, right, they're in A or they're in C or they're in whatever, and you could drop on and play and get involved? Because I cannot do that.
Yes.
I've got no idea.
Yes, I can, and I think that's probably the.
So would you have taught yourself, Steve? Would you get to a point where you go, oh, I really like what I'm doing here. These 3 chords are great, but there's another chord and I don't know what it is. I'm going to work a chord out, or I'm going to have to learn this platonic whatever it is, or was it kind of like that for you?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's I mean, you know, when you, so I did, you know, when I went to I went on a music course for 2 years, 3 years, I think. And I studied guitar for 2 of those years. And let's be honest, you know, when I went in there and when I came out, I was a different, it was night and day in terms of my ability and capability and technical skill on the guitar, you know. So I came in with quite a limited skill set and tool set really on the guitar. It's a crude way of putting it, but I knew where I could operate in comfortably. But after the 2 years, I was on another level really,
right.
You know. And even then, when I thought I was doing all right, you know, I thought I was good then in terms of my own ability, not comparing myself to anybody else, but my own sort of progression. I still had a shitload to learn, you know, and that just comes through. I mean, these days you can watch videos on YouTube, right? You know, you can pretty much choose any style or song, and you'll find someone who will teach you to play it, and it's amazing. That is game changing, really, for anyone wanting to play and learn quickly, I guess, you know, as well. But in answer to your question, yes, you'll always come up against that where you're sort of 3 chords away from probably a 4-chord song. You don't know what that 4th chord is, you know, and then you have to go away and think about it or find it and learn a bit more, you know. And then you might come back with maybe five or 6 more chords in your armory.
Yes.
And then over time, you first of all, you want to use them all in a song because you just can't wait to get them out.
Yeah. Yes.
But then you realise you've got to rein it back in again and just think, okay, I'll put those in my back pocket for another song or another time because it's not fitting in with this current context. So, you know, it's push and pull. And it's a journey, you know. Anyone learning an instrument will testify to that.
And the frustration and for me anyway, the frustration and the kind of breakthrough moments and the joy are kind of always, you know, but the joy obviously must prevail because you keep doing it and you keep going and you get better and you learn more. And I think in the end you start learning that there's as much space that's important than there is, like you say, cramming all those chords in or whatever. Or that's interesting. So when you're getting into the electronic music, it's when electronic music is really starting to sort of birth itself into the main culture, the young people's culture, into the nightclubs, into the high streets and stuff. And that must have been exciting. And I know that you had a history of, you know, DJing and putting parties on and getting out into the woods and stuff like that. So that must have been exciting. Oh, for sure. It was the elixir of life for me for probably from, I'd say, late 90 to 95, 6 was when it was really every weekend for me. Wow. Living for it, really. You know, everything else was just kind of a barrier to the weekend, you know, the day job and everything like that. I just became completely obsessed with that scene, and not from a I want to be a DJ hero perspective, anything like that. It wasn't why I fell into DJing because a couple of my mates were doing it, and I wanted to learn what it was all about. And I liked the idea of mixing 2 records to make 3, or to make something that is almost like composing. And I just found that quite interesting, and so that process of learning that was almost like perfecting another instrument, I suppose, you know, from my own personal sort of perspective. And you know, then it became a case of I became an avid record collector. I was going all over the country hunting down, you know, promos and tracks that nobody else had. It was almost a case of, if you're going to do DJ, you're going to have your own sound, and you need to be unique. And this is all the stuff going in my head because I overthink everything. Right. I'm a bit OCD on these things. So, you know, you've got to have your own sound. You've got to, you know, and you've got to build it up from a very slow sort of vibe, and, you know,
as the night progresses, you're building it up and into a crescendo. You know, it's like composing an orchestra.
Yeah.
So I used to, you know, buy different types of music for different sorts of events for different nights and when I was playing and where we were playing as well. You know, depending where it was, indoors or outdoors. Or but yeah, we threw quite a few free parties. Some around Lincolnshire. Then it sort of moved out to Cambridge, Sheffield way. We did a few in London, one on a boat.
Awesome.
And it was just fantastic times, really. I think the key thing I take away from that was it's probably the freest I could have ever been. Just by the fact that from week to week, you knew you were going somewhere, but it wasn't that orchestrated and project managed. You know, you just had to be somewhere and you just throw a rig together. People would turn up. There were no mobile phones. There was no. It was all word of mouth, and it just felt like it was something new, something that nobody else was doing, or a minority of, an outlier group of people were doing. Yeah. It felt sort of sacred and uncorrupted and not for money. And as you're explaining that, as you're kind of painting that picture, it took me back just to a moment ago when we were talking to your neighbour, and can you remember when we shook hands and smiled at each other and we weren't kind of evading everybody's potential death threat? Made me think then about the parallels between the way we consume music now. You just talked a lot there about collecting records. Your friend came round with a new order pile and said, hey man, listen to these, and you'd have laid on your bed and opened them up and been reading the sleeves and been wondering and painting pictures in your mind about who did this and who played on that. Yeah. Wow. And taking the record off, clean the record, put it back. This physical relationship, this meaningful relationship. And then as you go on to talk about, traveling the country to find music and eventually putting nights on and congregating with people, no mobile phones, no crazy agenda to make $1 million, to be on the front of Mixmag, just to get to a little space in the woods or wherever it may be, an old warehouse, put that rig in there. Is it a good rig? Is it going to sound good? Yes. And smiling faces who are there because they sought out that music and that community. So as we sit here today, are we old fogies who just don't get it where it's at? Is change inevitable? Are we missing something? Is that kind of union still happening? Are kids finding music in a way that is meaningful, that requires some kind of pilgrimage, some kind of commitment? And if they are, that's fucking amazing. I'd like someone to send me some links and some videos of people doing this stuff. And if not, what are we losing? What are we losing as especially for young people? Like you mentioned something quite beautiful. That you can't imagine a time where you were freer. Yeah, I mean those are quite loaded questions. I don't know if I can answer really, because I've tried to observe what my eldest stepdaughter does and tap into what that generation are, how they're consuming music. Consuming sounds such a corporate term.
Driven into us, isn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, their musical taste is as diverse as you like. 1 minute it's ABBA, the next thing it's Kate Bush, the next thing it's
Skrillex.
It's all over the shop, and I think, well, respect. There's no barriers there at all to entry. It's just whatever's going on their Spotify playlists and whether they want to listen to it or not. So it's much more. I don't know whether it's as considered, where they're going out on the humps like you've just said, and that pilgrimage element of it. Maybe it is for some, and you'd have to sample some teenage, that generation to see what their thinking is around this. But I would say that there has to be some, because people still buy vinyl, and there's a lot of people who buy it are in this sort of younger generation, in that kind of 18 to 30 age group. So someone's buying it, and someone's listening to music that's, kind of been probably at the pinnacle of popular music, and those album sales are exponentially growing as well in terms of revenue for labels. The big sort of icons like Bowie, and I'm not going to reel them all off, but you know where I'm going with that. So and so I think the discovery thing's still there. They're just maybe coming into it from a different medium, and whether they decide to branch off and go down the vinyl rabbit hole, or CDs, but I don't think anyone really bothers with that so much. The vinyl thing is kind of the vintage champagne, isn't it? You know? So I think it's still there. I still do think it's there. Maybe that's just me being optimistic, or maybe portraying my thoughts on something I don't have that much knowledge of. But it has to be right, because there's music coming through from young bands, young guys who are listening to it. You can hear this in them, in their
that's right,
in their songs and in their output. Think about Working Men's Club. Who we saw.
Brilliant,
fab band.
Yeah.
What does that sound like to me? It's kind of it's going back to New Order. And,
I was going to say New Order and Joy Division, and it's not far away, is it?
Yeah, and Mark E. Smith, and that's all that sort of regurgitated, but in a different way as well. So I still think it's there. I still think it's probably not as well. Maybe it's more. I don't know. I think there's more music out there to listen to.
Yeah, that's for sure.
It's free. Well, not free, but not far off. So there's more content to plough, but it's just finding it all, I guess. But then there's a lot more capability to share music around, and playlists and stuff like that. So.
It's the romancer in me. I just, similarly to you, I've got a stepdaughter she's no longer a kid. She's 21 this year. And I've heard myself across the time, whatever the local pop thing is or whatever, and I've heard myself, what's this shite?
Yeah, I've done that.
Reverse back to oh my God, that happened to me. And I'm thinking, hang on a minute, right, step back, right, this could be the new Kurt Cobain, this, or this could be, whatever. And then I look again and I think, well, hang on a minute, okay, let's put the artist to the side, let's look at the infrastructure surround, what is this? Oh, well, it's, it's Polydor, and it's, choreographed, and it's, so there's a lot of that, but let's not get bogged down too much there. But I do wonder, I hope the romance isn't dead. And I definitely think you're right with the vinyl. A lot of my friends have been picking up vinyl record players again and collecting records again. And I've been in, for us, Jim's Sonic Sounds. I've been in there a handful of times in this last year when it's been available to get in there. And it's been nice, actually. It has been nice. I hope that romance doesn't die, or isn't dead, for sure.
I certainly do. Who knows, right? Who knows? I mean, we don't know what tomorrow brings, but I was pleased. You mentioned Jim there. I mean, I used to go into gyms going back 20 years, I think. He used to help me out a lot, actually. Amazing guy. I'd go in there and spend probably a day in there sometimes, just trawling through.
Well, here we go again. I'll interject again, because that part of the community that you would be in there and talking to, you might be thumbing through some records, and you might say to Jim, was this 1963? And someone will turn around and give you did you know that so-and-so played on that, and they recorded it, and there's this thing, and you would be in there all day, and you'd be...
Yeah. It was a community, it was a community thing. It was kind of like a relationship building thing, and he'd know what I'd like. He introduced me. He got me into, like Uncle and bands like Royksop, and he used to have these promos that would come in, and nobody else would really want to listen to them. So he'd say, here you go, Rabs, just have that, mate. And I said, well, how much do you want? Sort me out some other time. Don't worry about it. And, come on, Jim.
Powerful Jim. Big shout to Jim.
Jim Sonic. Love you. So, many times, and his shop disappeared, then came back. And that was a sort of a reflection, I guess, of how things have sort of gone wound back a little bit, but it's quality now, and it's kind of the people who are really doing it believe it, and they're authentic. It's sort of sorted the wheat from the chaff.
Oh, I like that. I like that way of looking at it. Yeah, that's
like the high street, isn't it? You know, all the sort of all the sort of monolithic, monochrome shops are all sort of, you know, all starting to die now. The big beasts, like, you know. What might replace that is more sort of bespoke, tailored, authentic businesses, you know, that are selling quality craft.
Independent, of their own mind. That's kind of why I pick this out, because there's so many parallels for me with the way technology's kind of taking hold, because we like to innovate and make things easy, which is great. And I just wonder across whether we're talking about music or your neighbour or whatever it may be, schooling, sort of more we come away from something physical that requires us to get off our arse and do something and commit to something. I don't know how much we lose in, or if we're losing, or if we're just changing. We're probably just changing. I don't know.
Evolutionary, I guess. And yeah, you're right to call that out. I think it's probably goes with the territory of getting older and seeing something that you've had part of your life that's been so held close and so kind of authentic to you, be replaced by something that's not quite what you thought it would be, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's got to be.
You're kind of almost grieving that to a degree, I think.
Yeah.
And I certainly do. But then I try and snap back into, come on, be optimistic. It's just like my dad telling me, what's that jungle music you're listening to?
What's all this fucking racket?
Yeah. So I don't get it, Stephen. It's awful.
God bless you.
It's just, and sort of, I don't know, you know, things change, but maybe not that much when you look at it over a longer time period. But the format's changed, and the music business models maybe changed in terms of it's more. Well, has it changed? Has it gone back to where it was? That's another question. But the way it's sort of, you know, rented now, it's a rentier world of music rather than actually owning anything. It's probably where the big sort of, the only grief I have is that no one's going out and buying music and investing in something. And therefore, because you've invested in it, you naturally want to spend time with it because you've spent your wages on it, and it's like, you know, it's yours, and so you almost feel like you've got to give it time and you've got to enjoy it, or not got to enjoy it, but you've got to spend time with it and listen to it properly because you've bought something.
Yes, I know that.
If you're renting it, it's throwaway more. You know,
of course. You send a link now, you get a link. Oh, Steve sent me a link. Right, number one of the politic of this for me is like, who sent me this link? This is where I am today. Okay, so if someone's sending me a link of music, because, and this is not a knock on any music or anybody that I trust or don't trust their opinion of music, but we are so saturated, so inundated. Yeah. So I've got to like go, okay, well, who sent me this? Oh, it's come from Steve. Oh, it's come from Michael. Oh, it's come from Tommy. Right, I'll follow through. Because if I checked every single link and I hit the link and the artwork's amazing and the name's great and the track looks good and the first 30 seconds is great, everything's just great, and it's just like mind-boggling. It's like I can't then discern anything because it's just, even if it's not my type of music, it's like everything's so good, it sounds so good, everything's mixed, produced, quantized, mastered. So I've kind of got a little sort of a structure in place where I try and pay attention to trusted kind of shouts.
Yeah, trusted sources sort of.
Yeah, because it's just so vast otherwise. But when you allude to it there, you know, once upon a time, if I'd gone in town, I remember buying a U2 record. I forget which one it was. It might have been Pop. Anyway, I went and spent $12.99 on a record, got home, put it in my CD player. I was like, oh, fucking hell, this isn't, you know, whatever, this isn't the Joshua Tree. Yeah. And I'm like, you know, and I'm reading the art and it looked great, it looked fucking amazing. It was like, wow, this is weird and this is different and this is, you know, and I'm trying to get my head around, right, I listened to it again. And then the third song, you know, on the third listen, so I was, oh, that's not, you know, and then there would literally be, in the most crudest of explanations, you'd stick with it because you'd just give 13 quid and walk back and forth to town up steep hill, and you'd stick with it because you're like, no, I've made this, and I don't think it's just because you spent the money. I think because you've committed to it, you made a decision that took all of this kind of surrounding energy and commitment. And as you say, now you get that link and like, oh, you know, fucking hell, shit. You know, yeah, I'm at the link. Just however good that music is, I'm just, do you know what I mean? Like the ceremony of it is.
Yeah, I totally know where you're coming from on that. And,
It's really difficult.
That's incisive wisdom, Sam, actually.
Is it?
I think you've nailed something there that I've never thought of myself. I learned, you know, you're right. It's it's not just a monetary investment. It's very much I don't know what it is. There's another investment going on that's
there's a truth to it because you've committed
chemical,
to
maybe,
it.
you know, sort of endorphin, sort of all that kind of stuff going on in your brain, where you're sort of you're building yourself up to something because it's well, you know, whoever it might be, a band you invested in before, you like, you love, and we've all done that.
Yeah.
And you get it home, bang it on, and the first track is like, okay, and you start to feel your heart sink, and you think, shit, what if I don't like this?
I've got it wrong.
Yeah.
What
if I don't? It's almost like I don't know. It's like going on a first date or a blind date or something where you're building it up, and when you meet the person, it's like, no.
Yeah.
And you hear the song, and you think, well, I've got to give it more time. You know, let's see what the next song brings, and you wait. The anticipation's building. That doesn't cut the mustard. So you maybe 2 tracks in, you turn it off. I would say maybe I don't think I've ever got past 2 or 3 of the first going through in the sequence of an album when I first bought it and thought, right, I need to go all the way through here. I normally go, maybe I'm not in the mood today, so I'll come back to it. And that's usually what I've done, you know. And maybe it's come on shuffle, and there's one track that's come out of it, and you're coming at it from a completely different perspective. There's no expectation. Even. Yeah, you know, you're not waiting for the big fanfare. It just comes on, left field, amongst another load of tracks, and then you're listening to it in a different way. And then you think, oh shit, yeah, okay. It's time to delve back in again, and then you discover it. I don't know what that is. I think that's
perseverance. It's some kind of space that we allow. I think in our minds. I think we reprogrammed our way of thinking. Our cognition now is like, you know, like kids get their cars souped up and get them chipped, and it's almost like now we're just, you know, unless it's fucking. We've just gone. It's gone. That chance is gone. It's burnt. I mean, I remember having the feeling often where it might be a best mate or someone I'm in a band with, and I really want to love this record, and they give me the record, and I'm like, oh fucking hell, yeah, that's all right. It's a bit whatever, cock rock or whatever it might be, but then there's a track that kind of you're neither in or there with, and then over time you fall in love with the track. You know, like when that happens, when a track all of a sudden, I don't know, takes you on a journey where, I don't know if it's you don't understand it or it's just not vibing, or it's just whatever the chemistry is in the music, you know, because obviously different music for different moods and so on. Somewhere along the line, there's chemistry for the long slow burner, the one that just creeps up, and it's kind of, its measure just shows itself after a certain amount of listens or whatever. I used to love that feeling. But it is something that I use this as a kind of a parallel or a metaphor or some kind of, I'm trying to trade off of like the wider world. Like it feels to me like the music industry in so many ways is kind of like a precursor to where we're going humanely with these ideas, you know, the pilgrimage, owning something, sharing something, the community, the meaning, the fact that, you know, it's just not everywhere all the time on everything, and it's great and everything looks great, like everybody's in everybody's pockets now. You know, those bunch of mates you would have met in the woods, you haven't seen some of them for months because they're from that end of the country and this end of the country, and because you haven't, but because you share these moments, there's a real strong bond. You know, and whereas now it's just everybody's in your pocket all the time. You haven't seen these lads for 2 years, but you know he's just had another kid and they're having a christening on Sunday, and there he is, and he's had fucking toad in the hole for tea yesterday, and we know everything. And so therefore that saturation kind of just, I think it does two things. It kind of like paralyzes us and kind of, I I don't know, there's like an anxiety that comes from it as well, where I don't know, just the overwhelming everything, everywhere, all the time. We don't trust to reach out and grab something that means something because you get it wrong, or it's moved along, or do you know what I mean? I'm probably not qualified in trying to say what I'm saying at all.
So I think what you're saying is we've almost reached critical mass of music and art because of the amount out there that's available to us. Is that what you?
Yeah, I think that's definitely an element.
Saturation.
Yeah, I think the way that it gets to us so quickly, because if you find your way to it, there could still be the same amount of art out there, which I think there probably always has been in some way or another.
Yeah,
it might not be digital art, but in some way or another, people creating and making and writing, but you found your way to it, and that's where I think the magic is.
Yeah, for sure.
Whereas now it's just fucking hell. Which button do you press? Fucking which door do you go? Oh my God, you know, like, and then because there's so many, there's this subconscious kind of eject seat where it doesn't matter because there's just more great shit. I don't know. Because you know it and it's there and it's just in your phone, and Spotify's saying to you today, you know, I'm about to listen to, do you know what I'm going to listen to fucking Cream today or whatever the fuck, and then, what if you like that, or you like this, and what about these, and what about that? Oh, fucking hell, I don't know. Yeah, let's try that, and fuck, you know.
Yeah.
And over time, like, what, I don't know, I'm out my depth, but definitely feel like, and we'll get to, like, experiencing trying to make music, not just listen to it, trying to create music and share it to the listener. That's another rapid change. And what does that do to the creative process? We've experienced it, haven't we?
It does, yeah. So yeah, I mean, in terms of that process, again, that's changed massively in 20 years. So going back to, you know, when I first thought about maybe trying to make music, would be probably mid-90s, I think, and it was purely by a friend of mine saying, I've hired a studio for 3 days. Do you fancy coming down and bring your guitar? I thought, yeah, okay, see what this is all about. I'm interested in the techie side of it.
So you're playing a guitar in your bedroom, learning covers, playing stuff, maybe kicking around. Have you ever played with people in bands? Or?
I was playing in bands. Yeah, I was in bands. Yeah,
so you've done bands and stuff.
Sort of, you know, I never really stuck at it much with bands because I tended to fall out with. There was too many
pretentious singers.
Yeah, yourself excluded from that. Must just caveat that. But you know, not just singers, Sam. I mean, I'm talking about musicians in general.
Yeah.
It's a very look. Let's be honest. Artists, musicians are. I'm not trying to be generalistic here, but there is an awful amount of concentration, an awful lot of pretentious, ego-driven musicians. It's just it comes with the territory, right?
Of course,
you know?
yeah.
And it's fine. It's fine. You know,
it is fine. We need it.
You need it because people have to be in order to get this out of them. What I found in bands was that, you know, I was younger, and I was also very kind of quiet, reserved kind of character who just didn't want really to be involved in sort of ego clashes and confrontations. I just wanted to play. So for me, I didn't really enjoy the band experience around those times in my sort of late teens, 20s. I kind of avoided it, which is why I like DJing, because it's
I was going to say, yeah. So then end up DJing, and then it's just you and your
it's
vibe.
Just me, yeah, just losing myself in you know, my own little space. So yeah, I get into a studio. A friend of mine hires it for 3 days. He said, "Come down," and I get down there, and it's basically a 3-day party. He's invited loads of people down. Drummers, bongo players, bass players, and I think, Jesus, who are all these people, and what am I going to do? It
wasn't the Brian Jonestown massacre, was it?
It might have been, I don't know.
You got my vape round there, Aidan. Sorry, Steve. Just grab my vape off that desk. Your vape.
You can use that if you want.
I'm all right, I'm good. I've got this one here. Superstar, thank you, sir.
Yeah, so it was 3 days of just kind of him just throwing some I guess loops down really and things like that, and we didn't really know what we were doing at all. We had no sort of structure around it. We were completely naive, you know, and that's that's how you'd expect it to be, right? You're not going to walk in there and just know and own the room and know where you're going with a song if you've never done it before, or any kind of track. And by the end of it, you know, he'd spent like over $1,000, and that was a lot back then.
Yeah, God, yeah.
And we had nothing to show for it. But we did have a load of sort of samples, and you know, he went back and we put he worked with someone else on that then, and something came together. But it was okay, you know. We sent some demos out, or you know, and sort of tested the water. There was some interesting stuff in there, but it was okay, right? So, but by then I thought, yeah, I just like the whole process of it. It's really, really, just really fascinating to me. Not just the technical side, but the whole way it all comes together at the end, and the creative process, I guess.
Yes.
You know.
Yep.
So I went down and sort of thought, right, I'll do it on my own and see how I get on. And you know, a similar sort of journey of learning to.
So you went back to a studio.
I went back to a studio.
Did you have songs written?
I didn't have songs written then. I just had ideas, really, just kind of things in my head that I thought I'll try, and it sort of transpired that most of it was shite. But you have to go through that.
Yeah.
You have to get all this
Of course.
crap out of your head, and try it and fail, try again, fail even worse, and just go through that horrible, you know. Well, I wouldn't say it's horrible. It's a learning process, right? But at the time, you think you're knocking out something that is going to, you know,
Change the world.
Change the world. You know, it just feel like, you know, I'm riding it. I'm going to be something, and it's delusionary, but you need it because that's what pushes you forward. You know, that's what makes you want to do it again and again, and until you prove yourself for real. And so there's a lot of stuff that got made that was utter shite, but that was part of the process. And you know, and I don't believe anybody in the industry, any successful artist who says, or, you know, all these kind of anecdotes about very successful artists who've kind of just walked in and said, yeah, I want that there, I want that there, I know what I want from day one. It doesn't happen like that. That's not reality. It just doesn't happen. It takes time. It probably takes, I mean, you know, for people that mix music, it can take 20 years. And, you know, you'll see bands from the UK, successful bands, you know, like all the sort of guitar bands of the 90s and even now, and you'll know if you're sort of into the kind of the techie bit behind it, you'll notice that nearly all that music was mixed in America on the West Coast. Right. There's only a certain group of people who can do it, and they're gold dust, you know, and they're the ones who add the magic on the music, and it's a finite, very, very hard to learn skill, and it's almost something you don't learn. It's like magic. Yeah, you know,
it is. It's black magic. Yeah, it is.
So, not knowing any of this when you're coming into it, you think you can do everything. So you not only can you write, and you can play the guitar, and you can play the bass, and whatever else. I try to get, you know,
look the bollocks in the leotard.
Look the bollocks in the leotard. You know, perfects the, you know, the sort of the hairstyle, the whole image, and all that. Yeah. You also think, yes, I can engineer this, and I can also mix it, and I can also master it. You know, you just think that, and until you fail, and until you listen back and think,
humble yourself.
Yeah, you have to. Your expectations then start to become more honed and fine-tuned, and then you realise you've got to let go of all these things, because music is not a one-man mission. It's not. It can't be a selfish thing. It has to be a collaboration of different skills from, you know, different parts of the process. So you realise that then when you look at all the great albums out there and great music made, there's key people involved in it, stakeholders who have done this for every single successful artist in that field on the planet. So it's a finite bunch of skills and resources that you can't emulate in a year or the first day in the studio. And I think a lot of kids who try and think they can do that, you know, it's an educational thing they have to go through, and you have to kind of set their expectations a little bit on that, you know.
So when you come out of those 3 days, number one, I want to know, had you had a great time? That's the most important thing.
Brilliant time.
Number two, did you learn something?
Both.
There you go.
Yeah.
So that, like you quite rightly say, and this is kind of applied learning that I'm doing all the time now to everything with my kids and stuff, like, are you having a good time? Because if you are, receptors are open, everything's absorbing, everything's engaged, everything's on. And have you learned something? Brill. After that, where your delusion is or where your ideas may be, that could cause you some friction, But if you realise you're having fun and you're learning something and you just follow that through, that's great. So you guess you do. So what happens after those 3 days then? What's the next stage of your musical career?
A little bit more of that, really. We just toyed around with different sessions, and I started working with a couple of other people I knew over in Nottingham, and it was just sort of just doing little bits, really. I'd probably turn up with a guitar and put guitar tracks down more than.
I was going to say, what kind of stuff were you doing? Were you kind of amalgamating a bit of everything, using a guitar, using keyboards, using beats?
It was mainly beats. It was electronic. It was house music, really. And sort of more maybe laid back sort of funk stuff as well, trip hop as it was called then, really. But beats, sort of slowed down, 80, 90 BPM, sort of really ambient kind of tracks. And I'd just come in with a guitar and just sort of go with whatever I was feeling from the track, So it sort of turned into a bit of session playing, I guess. I started doing, and the sort of main guy I work with, who now lives over in Derby but was in London for a long time as a tour manager, and he was sort of quite useful for me because he got me to do some guitar stuff on bands he was producing. That was sort of coming through from being signed to sort of smaller labels, and he'd send some stuff up and say, can you put anything on this? And he would sort of send me notes back, and usually it would be just like sort of, I would describe it as industry talk. It didn't make any sense to me what he was trying to critique. It wasn't like, oh, can you turn this bit down, or can you
make that 4 bars short?
Yeah, or sort of. I don't think that sounds in the right key, or it was more. He was using like industry language, which was sort of didn't make any sense to me. And I said, "What are you talking about? You need to. That doesn't make any sense to me at all. What do you mean?" And he eventually, I'd get him down, I'd boil him down. He would just say, "Less is more," and that's all he would say, right?
Yeah.
So that was one of his. After sort of 10 iterations of a conversation on an email, it would turn into that. Less is more, basically. I said, "Why the hell didn't you say that from the start? We could have, I could have done this by now.
Yeah.
It would have been in the bag." So, yeah, it was kind of like, for this track, don't put, don't do us.
Yeah, finger
do a
workout. Yeah.
Just a gradual, a more standoff, ethereal kind of sound, and that's what he. That was kind of like, right, I've got to stop thinking what I think is right for the track and listen to what the producer and the kind
interesting.
Of engineer thinks is right for the track. That's taking their, my sort of subjectivity away and letting them control it, because that's what the session player does, really.
That's what's interesting. I was just about to say, Steve, because from my point of view, I've only ever gone in to do original music. So I've never considered it to the point of view of like being somebody who's there because you've got skill and we want you to produce something and this is the kind of thing we want. Go. That's a whole different thing, that.
Yeah.
That's a whole different thing.
That's why I mean the industry talk, because it came over as very artistic language he was using. And what I realised he was trying to say was this was all sort of running through his conscience of how he couldn't talk. He wasn't musically trained. He didn't know how to play an instrument. Didn't know how to articulate musically what he wanted. So it came out of a different channel for him. It was all, this is arty language, and it was like, for me, it made no sense. But so he had to work himself to try and make that.
That's interesting though, because when
sense to me.
I haven't had any musical, and I've worked with you extensively over the last 10 years, and when I'm trying to explain. Right. what I think, right? Can you come right? Hang on, right. It needs to kind of be like thinner, almost like it's like through a letterbox, and then there's like mountains, and it's behind the mountains, but you can just see it, and it's glowing. You know, like I kind of using that kind of language, and you've got it, and Tommy always got it, and like there's something amazing about blurting out bizarre language like that to somebody, and then somebody sending you some music back, and you're like, yes, that's magic to me. So do you find then with relationships like that with that guy, and I'm sure many more, that you start to learn that kind of language and how to adapt to the language and the kind of the lexicon of it all?
Yeah, I think you do. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's an abstract language, and you know, you've actually hit on the point there. You've used it yourself with me. You know, I've got it from you, and I've thought I've understood it more. You know, I've sort of got the sort of radar for it a bit more, and I realised that, you know, that's how you express your.
This non-musical person wants me to make this sound like I think he thinks. Like it's kind of glowing and it's, you know, all around, but it's nowhere, but it's there. And yes, magic. It's magic. I've worked with people where, and you know, you can only sort of hold yourself accountable. I always think, well, fucking hell, I don't. But then, how do you explain a feeling in a middle eight? You know, because it's not a chord. It's not a, you know, you might be a sound on a moog. Oh, have we got something more ethereal? Have we got something a bit harder or whatever? But a general feeling of a section or a composition or a song in particular, there isn't a real language, is there? It is literal. The observer or the participants kind of, and if you get that gel, because when you don't get it, it's a fucking nightmare. But when you do, there's a magic that's happening. It's almost like a telepathy, even. Yeah,
it is. I mean, you can either say that needs in the middle eight, but most people don't approach it like that. It's very much where you're coming from. I can only compare it to when you hear people who are trained in art critique, or artists who are teaching people. Like my wife's an artist, and we're watching this thing called
Powerful Sarah, by the way, amazing artist.
She is, yeah. And we were watching this thing called Landscape Artist of the Year, and there's like 4 art critics on it, and their fluency with the art language is almost like someone speaking fantastic, beautiful French. The way they speak about art, just all those words coming into your frontal, you know, lobe here. Yeah, something connects and lights up. So and that is almost like they have to tell a story about this picture, and once they do, then you get it. And what you tend to find is in music, I think that's where you're coming from, where you're sort of trying to tell me a story of how you think the song should sort of sound.
Yes, yeah.
And I'm picking up on that language, and the more fluent you get with it, the more it makes sense to me, and it becomes a reflective thing, you know. Yeah, so I start to sort of understand it more, and it'll click with you, and you'll get it. And when you've explained music to me that you're even listening to as a fan, you know, you've said to me before about a few bands you've pointed my way, and you've never sort of said, oh, this is all right, this is great, check out the guitar on that. You don't talk like that. You talk in that language, you know, because it's almost
a feeling. It's a feeling.
It's a feeling converted into. Well, it's very, very deep. This is, but you know, it's a feeling that uses really amazing language to articulate itself, and it's quite powerful.
It takes me on a side track about language its very self, because when I listen to Terence McKenna talk, who's a famous botanist and a psychedelic gentleman, from a lot of his work was videoed and it's available on YouTube from the 90s. Lovely way with words, and he always talks about language and like the anthropology of language, and you know how it is the one modem we have to communicate this universal thing, which is feeling.
Yes.
And it really made me want to read more books and learn, and to actually, talking about learning an instrument or learning the scale or learning the science of an instrument, like to learn to speak properly. And by that, I don't mean to speak properly. I mean, like you're talking about these art critics or this music language, like to be able to essentially try and deliver a feeling in a way that can be interpreted and understood and grabbed. That's about as powerful a thing. And it's almost got me round on my creative art journey in life and what I'm into at whatever time. I'm into music, I'm into records, I'm into podcasts, I'm into architecture, whatever it is. I'm really coming around to writing now as like such a pure form of like, because it is the catalogue of everything, isn't it? It's like these feelings, because you made me think of there, Steve, when you were saying these art critiques are using this language, this beautiful language. It's almost like another language, but somehow you get it. Somehow it is computing its message to you. And so even though it feels maybe like, oh, wow, that's a lexicon or a dialogue that's like way beyond me, I couldn't muster and put those words together.
Yeah.
Somehow you can untangle them. And that's where the power of literature is for me.
Oh, totally.
That's what I'm coming around to.
Yeah, and the more I get older and sort of greyer, the more I've become more open to that that kind of language. I suppose I've become more attuned to, or interested. I think interested in language, and because it's so powerful, and harnessing it and having all that word soup in your head that you can just assemble into the right kind of lines of order to get to tell your story or sell something, sell art, sell music, describe what you all these things. Language is it's mind-boggling really how it can be harnessed. And so there's an appreciation now where I would have once thought, what's this pretentious arsehole on about? I would now think this guy's an artist himself because he's an artist of language. As well as an artist on the canvas. So he's got it completely. He can walk in here and paint his picture, and he'll be able to sell it to you in not just because it looks visually
stimulating and engaging.
He will describe it all
seduce
in an oratory way that sort of all your senses are tuned in, so you think that's it, that's how you do it. So there's a newfound appreciation for language in me.
There is. Well, so you're making the music, you're kind of doing the session playing, you're learning the language of music, you're learning the communication of music, which we keep going off into these deep sidetracks, but that's where my head's at the minute. Because there's a lot of psychology and there's a lot of personality involved in adapting as well. So when you have your way of working or your way of understanding things or interpreting things, when you start to have to pivot on the move and adapt to more experienced people around you or a faster flow than you used to, it takes a lot of adapting there. So I imagine you're just getting stronger and a more accomplished musician and person of music, I'll call you, as the years go by. So at what point do you go, right, fuck it, I want to make something now that I can put in and listen to and play to somebody else and say, that's my stuff, that?
Yeah, I think that naturally, it came to sort of that natural step about 2003, 4, I think, and it was all down to I bought myself a PC, and I was hearing a lot about some software called Reason, and it was all everyone was talking about because it was really easy to make sort of electronic-y music. And I thought, well, that sounds like a good place to start. I'll give that a bash. It was all software synths, and it was all the composer's fantasy in a box, really. You could get in there, and there was you could rack up a load of different synth emulators, and you could sequence it on a timeline, and you couldn't get any audio into it at the time, but you could do pretty much everything you want within this software studio in a box. So I gave that about a year and got fairly proficient with it, and then things started to come out of me. Probably music that I'd been listening to previously for since I was a child, just all started to come out in sort of various different compositions. Some of it was all over the place, really. Some of it was okay, but it felt like a really empowering thing for me and a real stimulating, creative indulgence, and I never really thought I would do anything further than that. But then it's sort of the bug gets you, and you can't stop. And I couldn't stop doing it, and then, you know, I was knocking out stuff all the time. And I had to be up there in the studio, in my spare bedroom, and things just started to evolve from there, really. And then I suppose I got to the point where I thought, well, should I trying to write a song? You know, write some lyrics, because I'd tried it when I was in my 20s. You know, and it was just dross. You know, I had things in me that I wanted to sort of lay down in lyrics, but I could never get it right. So I thought, well, I'd written that one off for probably 10, 15 years, and I thought, well, if I can't get someone else to sing on my stuff, I may as well give it a go myself. So yeah, again, that was a learning process. It was kind of like, right, I need to write something that's going to make sense for a start, rather than just a load of words off the back of a cornflakes pack or something. You know, which is how it sometimes starts. It's just a bunch of words, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. And then you start thinking, no, I need to give this some narrative. I need to give it a storyline, and I need to, what am I writing about? What's channel your emotions, and trying to do that took a bit of time, and then eventually, I suppose, you just fine tune it and hone it. And the first Andrenachrome, well, no, I did two or three sort of electronic-y guitar tracks under the name of
Rebellious
Jukebox. Yeah, which was that was about 2007 or 8. And they were demos, really, and MySpace was there. You know, MySpace was kind of like that was a
mad fucking revolution, wasn't it?
MySpace was massive, and it was kind of another kick in the arse for me to. At that time, I thought, well, this is great, because you can get your music online, and people can follow you and give you feedback, and it's like, I don't need to go to a record label. Maybe I could do it this way. You know, this was all new, kind of. It's a new world. So I put stuff on there, and it started to pick up quite a lot of interest. And then there's some guys from Tom Robinson's show got in touch with me and said, oh, you know, we like this. I did a single called, God, what was it called? You're Machiavellian. And it was basically about someone I knew I used to work with, but I made it sort of a little bit political with a small p. And sort of like a driving punk track, but it was electronic. And they picked it up and played it on the radio, and I thought, oh, great. And then off the back of that, a PR agency from London who we almost worked with. I can't remember their name. Was it Rob? Someone we spoke to?
Vision.
Yeah.
Vision PR.
Someone from Vision PR. Now, I think really at the time I was a bit naive. I think really they were fishing for business, and I sort of bit. But,
well, of course,
to be fair, they put it out, did a review on it, did some promo on it, and it got featured in a few sort of online and a electronic music magazine, and just sort of for small features. And
this is you putting your first true bits together then?
That was, well, the bits I felt confident enough to put out. You got to bear in mind there was 3 tracks out of probably 50 that were I thought were only worth putting out.
Right. Okay.
And that was through a process of it was quite nerve-wracking putting stuff online then, because it was all new, you know. You're sort of exposing yourself a bit, and you're opening yourself up to God knows what, you know. So there was a bit of naivety there.
Well, I just want to jump in quick again with the deep sidetrack, but you just mentioned there, you know, there comes a point when you're going to give this to the world, you know, and for anybody watching this or listening who does write songs or poetry or sonnets or whatever it might be, it's one of the most personal things in the world to give that to somebody else, to let them hear it, to recite it to them, to sing it to them, to play it to them, for them to sit down and go, come on, then put it on.
Yeah.
Because it's such an expression of you, number one. And number two, we always doubt ourselves. We all doubt ourselves. We all think, well, I did it, so it must be shit because it was me. And that's such a tricky thing. And the reason I point that out is because I wanted to ask you as you're getting more and more into your music and you talk about lyrics and writing songs and actually putting songs together, do you find a cathartic kind of feedback in that, in doing that? Do you find like a meditation in that? Maybe not at the time, but as you look back, I mean, I don't think back in the 80s and 90s we're thinking we're getting any kind of therapy or sort of Zen time. But actually, when you do read what we now know with science, you know, about sitting down with a guitar or just writing, could be anything, just write, pick the pen up and write. You know, there's actual biological, neurological things happening that are very, very good for the system, for the karma, for the energy, which all sounds rather woo, but that's where we are. So I wonder, in the lead up to giving it away, did you feel that? Did you get that kind of like, yeah, I'm just lost with the guitar, I'm writing this down, it feels good, I've written that, and that you know, whether I give it to the world or not, that I was gone then for 2 hours, and that's out of me now. Yeah,
absolutely right. That's a great question. Which I was, I must admit, that's a big part of it. That process, learning, you know, the creation process is once you've kind of top and tailed it and you think, right, that's it. I think it's there. You've got to give it some time and then come back to it, revisit, and then you'll think, you kind of know instinctively whether it's a track that you think it'll work, but that's purely subjective again, right? So, like you just said there, my massive self-doubt was apparent all the time, and you know, I was starting to think, well, hang on a minute, you know, I'm bound to like this, aren't I? I've made it, so what the hell do I know if it's any good? You know, how do I know this is not just doggerel, or you know, not just something that sounds like it was made on a 55 quid Casio and is just it's just shit basically. So how do I get that outside view and perspective? So I did play it to a few people, a few of my mates, and that's never a good thing because your mates will always maybe be biased anyway.
Give you a pat on the back.
But or
tell you you're a fucking wanker.
Yeah, and I've got a couple of mates like that. So I dropped in the MySpace link, and they were like, they came back, and one of them is an old friend of mine I was in a couple of bands with. You know, he's made a bit of music himself, and he was very complimentary. In fact, weirdly complimentary. And I thought, I kept saying to him, what's your agenda? You know, be honest. He said, no, it's not. There's something about it. You know,
so is that the power of your doubt of yourself then, Steve?
I think it's a power of...
Because you are so skilled and crafted and talented, I guess is the main word, talented. So on some level, do you know that? You must know that on some level. And I know we all want to be humble and we all want to be, these kind of, but on some level, we know when push comes to shove, if we can stand our ground in an area, or whatever it may be. But there's still that battle when you give it away, and it can't be, a bit of you's like, yeah, that's good. I believe in that. It's good. But then the bigger part of you's like, oh yeah, but it's you, innit? And there's all these people and all these. There's a bit of that you can do it, or is the doubt like crippling?
I think originally it was crippling. I've gone through that process now, that cathartic process, I think, and that's purely because probably my own fault. Actually, maybe it's just the way I am wired up. Is that I probably looked too much to external viewpoints to kind of give me the endorsement that I thought I had some talent, because I never really considered myself as being talented. I thought, I'm just doing what other musicians do, surely. Everyone can make music. What have I got to show for it? So for me, it was a big point about proving to myself that I could actually be respected, I think, by people who I considered to be, who I guess peers, people I look to, who I think, wow, and maybe if I got a little bit of endorsement from that, I thought that gives me justification to keep moving forward and making music. I needed that sign off almost, really. I couldn't have just been gung-ho and stubborn to think, fuck you, whatever you think. And there's a lot of people who can do that, and I really respect people like that who say, I don't care what anyone else thinks about my music. I just make it and I put it out there, and someone's going to like it and love it. I was a bit more, I need to get consensus before I even think
affirmation.
it's any good.
Mm.
I kind of needed to look out to get that internal confidence. As that went on, I think once I started to master and I think a lot of it was technically mastering it as well, making it sound out, making the sort of, bringing my technical level up to my ambitions of how I wanted something to sound. Once I sort of reached that point to where I knew I could take it as far as I could go, and then I'd have to hand it off to someone else to take that extra step. Then, I thought then, yes, I am confident in sort of what I can do, what I can bring to a track, or what I can, where I can add value to anything musically, I suppose. Whether that's purely from a listener's perspective, my own enjoyment of it, or making it, So, that's. So I mean, I guess after that, I thought, well, maybe there is something. Maybe I can develop this a bit more, and things get in the way. Life and in general, just kind of, there's too much going on. And I've just had my son, and that was fantastic, and it sort of made me think, well, music's just too selfish. I haven't got time for
You're
it
a
anymore.
dad now, yeah.
Yeah,
That's it. Where am I going to get time to fuck about like that anymore?
Yeah, it was a case of that. I thought, well, it's got to be one or the other, and there's no time for this, and so put it on the back burner, and then sort of when Joe was 2 or 3 years old, I thought, no, here we go again. I need to get back on the gravy train and see where I'm at, and so I built a studio in a garage. And that's kind of how Andrenachrome first came about. It was just me, really, just in some more reflective mood, I think. That was sort of 2011, 12. I was nearly 40. I was 40, nearly 40. And I seemed to find myself writing lyrics that were more evocative, a bit more sort of, I've got something to say. I don't know where this is coming from, but I feel that. It was a bit sort of more jarry, really.
Yeah,
with a bit of dark humour in it.
Yeah, I like that about your stuff, yeah.
There's always a bit of humour in there, but it was just sort of, maybe I've got something. And it sort of fit in with and I made it sort of sound lo-fi, like it was recorded in a garage, electric, it was kind of very sort of...
Well, I think the first stuff I remember was Mother Nature's Ashes.
Yeah.
And The Art of Conversation. And to me, I think I said to you at the time, they had like a Beck kind of feel. There was that lo-fi DIY kind of almost. There's a swagger to it, but almost like that. It's almost like a geeky, studenty kind of swagger. There's a swagger like Beck, Beck.
It does sound, people did say,
but not
reference Beck,
but not like it sounds like Beck. There's that feeling to it. Back to that language, there's that feeling of like. The satirical, poking a little bit of tongue in cheek, but in an intelligent way, like not just brash or whatever. And then the lo-fi beats, the repetitive nature of it, but then the clever music, so you're kind of tricked into like the beat and the monotony, but there's a lot of clever musicianship and structure going through it. And your voice, which we'll get to as well, the way you sing, there's a character in there. There's a because I love the idea that you don't have to sing, you just have to tell the story, and you do that for me.
Oh, right.
I think that's lovely.
Oh, okay, that's nice to know. Thanks for that. I mean, those two tracks actually took a long time to get right, and I think it was a case of learned experiences and feedback I'd had from before that made that happen. It was less is more. Think about where things need to be in that track to not jump out at you, but just be there. That they sound like they should be there, but you don't notice them.
Yeah. That's when you get into the dark art. Yeah,
and that's when things started to. And I tell you what that was really was listening to a lot of music. I had to go away. I was just listening to a lot of music around that time and how people mixed. Sort of different sounds and instruments, especially in electronic-y music, where they were putting things in a dynamic of the mix, and where what was louder and what was quieter, and why was it louder? You know, it's obviously there for a reason, and you go down a rabbit hole with that. 'Cause you overthink it. You know, I'll go in there on a night, think, right, I'm going to get this finished because I've been doing this track for 6 months. It's time to stop. It's time to start obsessing about this hi-hat that I can't quite get to sort of sit right with the overall groove. And it gets to that level, and you read these sort of stories when you're reading sort of Melody Maker and those old magazines that are no longer around.
Once upon a time, yeah.
When sort of I don't know, I can't think of anyone because it's just completely any kind of famous
Brian Eno's talk.
Great example, right? Brian Eno, he's sat in there, maybe boring the tits off his engineer for 8 months saying, no, we just need to get that little 2-second micro sample to, just 2 dBs lower. No, let's try 2 dB. 6 months later, I think we need to go. You can imagine that's the process that he goes through. And a lot of, we know it because we've read it, but that's when you're spending too much time thinking. And maybe you never really get the track you really wanted to you envisioned. You end up something on a different tangent. And I was at that point, and I thought, well, I'm spending too long with this, so maybe I should just give it a break, step away from it, come back to it. And that break turned out to be about a year. just because I just thought, well, no, I can't listen to it anymore. I spent too much time with it. Then I went back to it and put my cans on, and those 2 tracks I thought, well, actually, I don't think I can do any more with them. That must be it. So now it's time to hand over for mastering, and then put them out. And then I got a feature in Electronic Music Magazine, which was fantastic. So I didn't expect that at all. That was great. So I thought, okay, well, there's probably some mileage in this, and
that belief gets injected.
Yeah, it gives you a bit of impetus to keep it rolling. But it didn't, because other things came along. I did Black Hawk, and then that was something else, another project.
Well, Black Hawk, again, for people listening who have been with us from the get-go, I've used Black Hawk and talked about you extensively in that sense, because I think that record for me, I was just turning 30 when that record came out. Is it six tracks? 6 or 8 tracks?
6.
Six tracks.
6.
Black Hawk, and I was going through a real, and for people, Black Hawk is you doing guitar and kind of traditional songwriting, intro, outro, middle 8, chorus, playing the instruments, really kind of, I don't even know if I can pigeonhole it on anything, but it's got that kind of classic songwriter's feel to me. Good songs. But it was all very reflective of like coming of age to me, and much like you're saying there, Stephen, in the sense of like the lyrics that you were writing coming down seem a bit more experienced, a bit wider, a bit better, trodden, better travelled. I don't know what the explanation is, but that record was great for me because I loved it. I thought, fucking hell, this, because I was having these things, I'm 30, I'm going to have a son, and where's my life going? And I'm not a party kid anymore, and I've got I'm on this track, and what does it all mean? And that was really, really, and I've played it on a couple of podcasts, I think. So people will be aware of that, and I'll link it in the bottom of this. But you did that record, and so for you, we have talked about this personally between us, because I've told you this story about what it did to me, but was it, you're a little bit older than me, so was that I was feeling coming through you in any way, that kind of coming of age or becoming a dad, was any of that there for you? Because that's what I took from it. I took, this is a guy really having some introspection on where he's come and where does it go, where he's been and where do we go from here, kind of thing as well.
Yeah, I think that was a loose sort of narrative underneath it. Yeah, it was a sort of, I think I was 41, I think, 2013, And I sort of had this. I thought, right, if I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this properly now. I've got enough. I've had all these experiences, and I'm going to put them all together, bring it all together, and produce an EP, and it's going to be done right. And I even hired a session drummer, and we worked out the songs before we even went in the studio. Everything was sort of down to, you know, everything was nuanced, finite, as much as you could get in a rehearsal room. And then we took it in the studio, nailed all the tracks down in quite a short space of time, because, you know, you're cognizant of the money spinning over, and whilst you're in the studio on an hourly rate. So I thought I've got to be, you know, sensitive to the budget, and you know, you're playing project manager and everything in that role. You've got to take your way, extract yourself from being a musician to be a project manager. You're directing, you're producing, you're pulling a load of skills together to make, you know, to deliver something that is going to be ultimately, you know, a musical album.
Stand the test of time.
Album. Yeah, stand the test of time.
Yeah.
And so that whole process took about 9 months from start to finish, over time. You know, not every week, but, you know, certain dates and times in the diaries, and then it was back to mixing, and then it was kind of like layering tracks on. And so, you know, I was going in and putting different guitar melodies over things, and we were putting keys on, and then I brought someone in to you know, to help me kind of mix it. A guy called George Schilling, who is just you know, I'm much admired and respected.
Yes.
Studio engineer, producer. He's worked with just about everybody you can think of, really.
A good example, I think he engineered Oasis's first #1, didn't he? Some might say.
Yeah.
And Fleetwood Mac and everybody in between.
Absolutely terrific guy. Just really, you know, instinctively when you know you can work with somebody. We've never actually met. We've always talked online, you know, but you just know that the warmth was there, the encouragement, the help, and it was just, please just take this and can you just deliver my sort of
language?
Yeah.
The language thing again.
So I'm the one now delivering the language. You know, the roles have reversed. So I'm trying to tell George what I think and how I feel. This you know, overall sound and feeling should be end to end. You know, track 1 to track 6, and that was interesting. And it took a bit of time for us to sort of work that one out between us, but you know, George is very smart. He's worked with just about everybody, so he knew. Again, he was receptive to that language straight away. Yeah. So it was more my problem being communicator than him being receiver. And then, you know, he took it from there, and by the end of it, it was. I was really pleased with it. I still wasn't sure, to be honest, if I was totally 100% with it, but I thought, look, I've got to get it out there now, you know, and try and see what the wider audience see how it goes, you know, into people's ears and where to take it from there. Now, I had no money to promote it, so by then I'd spent everything on sort of not writing but rehearsing with the drummer, paying him studio sessions and George's.
The money's fucking mad.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and that was on a very tight budget, you know. And George did me very good rates. Everything I got for everyone I work with, they gave me their lowest rates. So, you know, had I gone into any typical, you know, sort of well-known studio, that would have been a 20 grand budget.
Yeah,
I got it for a tenth of that, you know, end to end. So. Then I got it mastered by Abbey Road, but I didn't go into Abbey Road. I did it online because it's cheaper. Yeah. But I thought, okay, I'm going to push it as far as I can.
Let's pull a bit up, Aidan. If you search Black Hawk Bandcamp or Bandcamp and then Black Hawk, you should be able to find it. The thumbnail is like a boy with his back to you in like a monolithic stone world with wings. He's got like angel wings. I didn't know that he mastered it down at Abbey Road. I knew George had worked on it. So
yeah, well, George said he said I can master it, but it's often best for another pair of ears to check me, you know, so, and that's kind of the way it's done anyway in the normal process. So, yeah, I did that. But by then, like I say, the bank balance was zero, and I had no money to invest in marketing.
Isn't it a fucker? Because it's like, knowing what we know, obviously it's easy to say in 2021 because we can make things sound much better than we ever could with tools that we've got, as opposed to hiring those studios and getting those drummers and those mics and those engineers. And actually you can probably take a couple of gambles and keep some budget back, because that budget, really, all that work is getting the music to somebody, isn't it?
Yeah,
You've got to fucking get it to somebody, and you end up at the market with, here I am, but I've got no lift, no one can get me to, and it's like, that's the painstaking, like difficult part of, as we talked about with Jane with this, the creative process, when those thoughts come in, or when that necessary next step starts to show itself, and you start thinking about the calculating of what we're going to do next, and how does this, there does become that difficult divide between.
That's that's a really, really pertinent point you make, because what I realised very quickly is that I'd come to the very, very limits of my skill set, taking this thing as far as I could, going to the marketing elements of it and trying to get it to the listener was, I may as well have tried to learn Russian. It was a completely different, it was a completely alien world to me, and I didn't like it. I didn't want to be involved in that. I wanted to hand that to someone else and say, you're the guys who do this day in, day out. Please just take this and see where it goes. But I couldn't do that because I had no contacts in the industry at that level. I had people offering to promote it for me, but again, it was like, give me $1,000, give me 20 grand, and I could possibly get this featured here. I could possibly get this airplayed here. What do I bet on? There's no guarantees, by the way, with any of this stuff, and that doesn't matter whether you're Coldplay or whether you're me. There's no guarantees. It's all kind of hedging bets, and no, I couldn't afford a hedge bet, so I had no money left. So I just thought, right, okay, screw it. I'll stick it on Bandcamp and set up a Facebook page, and that's it. That's all I can do, And I did get a couple of people to do me some favours with reviews, and it was received well enough where I could get it out.
It's great, man.
But for me, it's a timepiece. I can go back to it and say, well, there's a track called Midlife on there, which is essentially me being an angry 40-year-old. And then seeing the way I'm going, and not being able to pull out of that because I'm switching from a young, optimistic soul to an old, miserable fart. But and I can laugh at that myself.
I think what you said there is really beautiful, because in the end, no matter all of these escapades we find ourselves on in the creative process for our own mental health, or our own need to express, or a want and a will to make it and be seen and be heard and to share your message or whatever it is, in the end, with a bit of luck on your side, you're going to be an old boy in your chair.
And hopefully.
you can go back and you can say, you know what, to your grandkid who's picked up his guitar and who's got this thing in him, have a listen to that. You might get something out of that, because you did it and you framed whatever that emotion, that journey, that epoch, that part of your life, it got distilled and expressed, and it's there. It's just there. You can go to it. That's what I do love about all these demos or whatever it fucking is.
It's a chapter you've a chapter of your life you've kind of recorded or made a journal of, and it's out there, and it's it'll always be there. It's a legacy I can leave. My kids don't know about Black Hawk and what half the stuff I do, to be honest, because those conversations you don't have. They will in time, I guess.
Joe's going to come in downstairs one day, and he's going to be a young, whatever he is, a goth or a rocker or whatever he's into, and all of a sudden you'll blow his mind, because that right time comes.
Possibly. You might say,
I believe this. I believe that there's a point when your kids realise that you're not just dad and that other
Yeah,
things have
yeah,
happened.
yeah.
And whether or not they're well into that kind of music or whatever, there is a point when they go, oh, fucking hell, wow, you did that. Because they just know you as, put that back, hey, oh, get you look left and right, don't just run out in the road. That's you. Then they see a video of you or they hear you playing a guitar and singing a song. That's a fucking special thing. That's gonna be impactful. That is somewhere down the line.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think and that's why you do what you do, isn't it? You know, it's like I say, it's a bit of a timepiece.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if I, you know, I'd had sort of the time and ambition, I would do one when I'm 50 next year, and maybe do every 10 years I do an album.
Yeah, that's a great
or
idea.
an EP, you know, something like that.
That's a great idea.
And then you're kind of checking your thinking and your journey in your life, you know. And
yeah.
a bit like Adele with her, you know, 19, 29, whatever she does.
Yeah.
So never say never. It's just when you think about it in your head, all of that process and all of that stuff you've got to put yourself through to make it happen is it's just too much of a commitment sometimes, you know.
Here you are then, devil's advocate. Earlier on we talked about the meaning of the pilgrimage, the meaning of the trek into town in the rain to queue up. I mean, I remember going and getting one of the Oasis singles when I was a kid at school. I got up at I think I did my paper round and went straight from the paper shop and waited outside Andy's Records for however many hours to get this fucking record on. So there's something in that willingness to get your sleeves up and get stuck in and get after it and fucking feel the pain and all that, just to listen to the music. So I think when it comes around to being 50, when it comes around to being 60, getting them sleeves up and picking that guitar up and slugging out some tunes, and because we know that there's no two ways about it. It's good for the human being to express.
Oh God, yeah.
Isn't
It is, yeah, especially during these times.
Fucking hell, yes.
And there was, to be honest, it could have been an album. And there was some spin-off songs that I couldn't afford to record, so I kept those, and there's probably there's probably about 6 or 7 more songs that I often pick up the guitar and go straight to. And one of them I really like playing it. It feels nice to sing and play it, and I think, well, that stood the test of time. It still feels kind of really emotionally evocative because it's kind of based on sort of First World War sort of story poetry I got into years ago. So there is stuff there. It's just it's kind of again condensing it all down and going through that process of recording, mixing and producing and project managing and then realizing you run out of money again and you don't want to repeat the same mistakes, so you're avoiding, you're more risk averse. But ultimately you don't want to let that kill your ambition though, do you? Because you talk yourself out of anything if you do that.
No, fucking hell no. That's a nightmare. So Black Hawk pops up in the middle. So Black Hawk, Aidan, did you find anything on Black Hawk?
Yeah, I need I don't know what the remote is for TV.
Oh shit, sorry dude. I've got it all around here. The harmonica and a remote were two things that I was playing with earlier. Sorry dude. So Black Hawk pops up in between the variations of Andrenachrome, essentially. No, there he is, yeah. So what the track you were talking about was Midlife.
Yeah, Midlife, yeah.
Let's play a little bit of Midlife.
Sounds a little bit...
people can find this at
blackhawk.bandcamp.com. Yes. Yeah, so...
Track 6. Midlife.
And you don't look like you care. There's too much long grass between us, yeah. Not that you were aware, not that we were aware. Altruistic, go figure. There's too much room in the heart. There's nothing left to consider, no, not that you were aware, not
Lots of great melody I found on this record. You've got
That's what I wanted in it.
great
really.
ear for melody.
We are young in our hearts, in our minds, not aware we get old and forget. You get older and wiser, but not really any nicer.
So did you play everything else, Steve, other than drums?
Yes, yeah, everything else is me. Apart from there's a bit of piano on there, which Simeon did, who was engineering it with me, who helps on a few little nuance bits on there as well and made it sort of glue together better. So, yeah.
Your midlife chapter is woken, yeah, not that you were aware, not that we were aware.
Yeah, man.
We are young,
Just jump onto track 4, Rising Sun. This is what I used on my first ever wild camp with Dave McGregor. When I got introduced to wild camping, I had this beautiful experience of the right thing at the right time, and I used this to soundtrack the episode.
Oh yes, I remember you saying something.
Oh, it's perfect.
winter's fading sun,
I love this song.
much to bear.
It's quite a personal song actually. I wrote this about my mother because she was having a bad time. She was having a sort of bit of a dark time in her life, and it's kind of about coming out of the depression, sort of, you know. But I did it on a steel guitar I had, which
You can hear it, it's beautiful, yeah.
Rising sun.
I love the sound of the drum there as well. How long did that take?
That actually didn't take that long because Andy was an absolute consummate pro.
Oh, okay.
We just cut the drums to come in at that particular point, you know.
Smile and bury all your sins and woes. Say goodbye to this world. There she goes.
And it's glorious, like a rising sun.
Like a rising sun.
Yeah, man. That little...
But that was another one from just messing around. You know, this is what
Happy accidents,
just process, and you just mess around, find things. That was him just knocking something in the control room. His idea, I don't know where it came from, but it works, you know.
That's awesome. Those little nuanced little... Yeah.
Yeah, that's the beauty of creation, isn't it? Things come in that you would never have imagined needed to be there. They just end up there.
And when you trust, when you are in that recording studio with those people and you do find that trust and that language can be shared and so intimate, and trying to share your ideas and your belief, and there's all that backdoor stuff going on. Am I good enough? Is this good enough? Oh, am I wasting everyone's time? When you find yourself in that trusted environment, that's when the magic, you allow this to happen, don't you? Oh, he's going to hit that and he's going to bang that. Oh, no, don't do that. I never had that in my head. That's gone. It's like, okay, let's try it. And then that works great. What about this? The flow comes.
That's why I think the underestimated person in a studio is the engineer and the producer. Usually the engineer, who's probably doing both actually. They're the people who are the glue that just binds everything together, and it's the relationship you build with those people that makes you implicitly trust them. And you just know they're coming from a place where experience has borne itself out, and that's why they're there, what they're doing, and by that they're giving you confidence, and you can relax, and then things flow much more naturally through you, when you're in that
when you trust,
that sweet spot.
When you said it earlier and we joked about talking to your neighbour and kind of the assumptions we make on the surface of things, because we're kind of, everyone's being polite and we're being practical in our neighbourhoods, and we're not borrowing milk off each other anymore, but then a little bit of exposure to somebody underneath that surface layer, and all of a sudden you unpeel a lot of fabric of yourself. Yeah. What did I think? What did I have you boxed up as? And the musical experience is I've had it a little bit myself. In fact, I'll have to play some of my demos. I went on a little mad musical making, as we said pre-podcast, I think, when I've been a bit down. I've said it in a previous podcast anyway, to the listeners and stuff. You know, I hit that point of like, I was fucking feeling the pressure of the current climate of the world and the future and having kids and my beliefs against the alignment of, you know, corporate government, you know, kind of projection. I'm thinking, fucking hell, my future does not look good. And it got on top of me a little bit. And I'd previously set up my old Mac for my kids who are now unschooling, and had it set up with GarageBand on it, because young Sonny's kind of really interested in getting on there. And I'd been out camping with Dave one day, Dave McGregor, Majestic McGregor, who I talk about there when we played that music on my first trip with him. This was with him, and he said, "I've got a Sheraton." He says, I'm on about selling it. He said, "But why don't you borrow it for a bit?" Because I was whinging about my acoustic because it's big and it's old and it's shit. So I borrowed the Sheraton off him, and I just thought I'll plug it into the GarageBand, and I was just fucking away, Steve. Away, it just came. It's a long time since I've sat down, because obviously the music I've done in recent years has been with you, which has been you sending me these fucking landscapes and sonic vistas of just, and then me just going, right, fucking hell, what do I feel here? Right, fucking write it. What do you think to that? Yeah, great. And we've made a lot of music, which we're going to get to. But this was the first time where I've sat down with a guitar or picked a guitar, fished some chords and gone, fucking hell, that's all right. And then put the chords in and then program some drums. And it's only in little GarageBand, you know, and then fuck about on the MIDI keyboard. And then 3-4 hours have gone by, and I've kind of, because as you know how I work, I fucking tend to be impetuous and rushed and... But I get to the end of it and there's something there. It's like, you know, there's a drum, there's a guitar, there's a lick, there's a whatever, synth, and a vocal and a couple of layers, because I can't not do layers of vocals. And that's my Beatles vibes. And then I thought, fucking hell, 4 hours have gone. And you know what? I was just gone then. I remembered what it's like to just... Because I always have that, I don't know about you, but I always get like an hour and a half in and I think, oh, this is shit. Anybody who makes music at home listening or watching, you know, you do get that feeling, because I get that feeling. At first it's like, oh, them chords are great. That's fucking great. Brilliant. Right, let's get a sound. What's that sound?
After you've read it for 80 times, though, it's like, hang on a minute now.
Get the sound on and then the beat. Oh, this is good. And then you start thinking, maybe I'm stuck on like, oh, I need a synth line. I need some. Oh, this is fucking. And then I could bail out. And once upon a time, I would have bailed out. And I go, no, you know what? Just keep going. Something's happening. Just follow it. I never thought it was going to be like a mad Africana funk thing, but let's just keep going. And then like get towards the back end of it, and I was a bit more pleased and a bit more kind of belief in it. Yeah. Still not sure. Right, I'm going to bounce this down. I'll bounce it down, and I'll listen to it on a different system in a different room. And then listen, think, that's not too bad. There's something in there. There's some that's not near. I nearly gave up on that. There's something there. If I was to do some more on that, if I tidy that up, if I you know, and like, and I did that every day for like 2 weeks, and like just fucking loads of songs came out of me. But it's also quite interesting how like in that initial time, whatever I did first was kind of my go-to. So as I spoke about earlier, like the fucking 6 chords that I know. So it was like me writing my song again, it just in a slightly different variation with a slightly different melody. Yeah, that was like the first one. And then Dave got me listening to a lot of 90s kind of simple music, like grunge music, and the Brian Jones Towns Massacre, which I totally missed the boat on. I don't know how much you know about him, but Anton Newcomb, who's real. If you're not ever so aware, I think you really, really enjoy him. He's such a liberating dude, in an independent, and in all of the things we've talked about tonight about expression and about not trying to refine it too much, but letting it be what it is and not killing it by making it live, you know, just... Anyway, I got well into his kind of philosophy as much as the music. Some really nice music as well. Sort of 2-chord, hanging, grunge, shoegaze, simplicity.
Yeah.
And then that first bashing GarageBand with me just doing the same old thing kind of turns into like, oh, I'm just going to hang on this chord and see what happens. And then, as you well know, I'll write fucking way too many lyrics and way too many sections. And then all of a sudden I'm just doing 2 lines. And I've completely changed. So I'll be interested to get your feedback, actually, see what you think. But as I go through, like, I get a little bit more brash, and then I start to really feel the pinch of the wider world, and then the BPM slow down, start getting more bass heavy, a lot more roomy, like darker, and it really does reflect. Like, see, because it was such a concentrated little period. Like, as I come back out the other end and kind of got through it, it's like, wow, fucking hell, them bits at the end really got like low. You know, like, and that's where I was quite low at that point, and I've had to sort of have a breath and just be with the family since then. But it's interesting how it's such a synergy between the expression of what you're feeling or how you're interpreting the world and what's coming through you, whether it's positive, negative, light, dark, or whatever. And for me on that little journey, it was a real kind of, it's weird because it's almost like I gave myself a cheat or a get out, because I'm at the wall of like what I know. I went the other way and just went really simple and just went to like one chord.
Yeah, I mean, well, this is it. I mean, you know, this is where I sort of fall a bit foul sometimes of I've got a few friends who are very, very accomplished musicians, you know, and they're, what I tend to fall out with them about is the fact that there tends to be a hierarchy, as we all know, in kind of musical opinion and critique, and it becomes very divisive and not very constructive. I think it's more reductive, and I think, you know, like we said earlier, people come at music from different perspectives, and if you get too technical about things, you're going to you end up being someone who says, you know, Oasis, the indie Britpop era was garbage because it was there was nothing inventive about it. It was regurgitation. It was very, very simplistic. There was literally no more than 4 chords in any of those songs. And, you know, it's throwaway, sort of scrappy, to be forgotten. But I think a lot of these people missed a point. You know, it was never about being technical. It was about guys who, you know, who just were like us, really, who just wanted to write songs to the best of their ability. Whether it was 2 chords, whether it was 7, is irrelevant. And it's kind of what they captured, lyrically and holistically, and the sort of, you know, the whole thing wrapped around that, the artistic sort of integrity doesn't really need to be technically taken apart. It just needs to be, well, let's just look at it as to what it actually meant to people and you know, the audience, and look how much it's revered now. I'm not the massive fan of all of it. I think Britpop was a horrible
term
silo to put it in. To be honest, but whether, like I say, whether it's 1 chord or 2, or whether it's you know, Zappa, who cares? It's whether it's authentic is what counts to me, and you know it when you hear it, when it's authentic or not.
No, I agree with that. That's nicely put, and that is Oasis seemed to be a classic example for that because they were so big, and because of the nature of the music they made, often related to football terraces, and there's a certain demographic. But that universal reach was there, wasn't it? And the snobbery was always going to come down from the top because, you know, look what I'm doing over here, but nobody gives a shit, or whatever is always going to be there. Okay, so let's bring Andrenachrome into the mix, because we know that it was you on your own. What 2011, 12? Yeah. So we're
a couple of years.
Yeah, so we're 9-10 years old. You do Black Hawk. You sort of come back to your tracks. You get those 2 tracks, Mother Nature's Ashes and The Art of Conversation, which, by the way, I will link in at the bottom of here. You might be able to find. Is that on Bandcamp?
Yes. Yeah, I think it is, actually.
Andrenachrome, Aidan. Mother Nature's Ashes. That's the vape kicking in. Because what I think you're saying in The Art of Conversation, and in both tracks actually, is really depicts now and the culture of now, you know, and the throwaway fast food. Yeah, there you go. That's the one. Let's have a listen to this. I think you nail it. Science and Nature, that's it. That's the EP.
Those lines across our faces need a little respect. And what's with all this plastic under your skin?
Great.
It's sort of gone that way as well, hasn't it? You know?
Yeah.
Boats of billionaires.
And that satirical tongue in the cheek, you know, with a wink and a knowing.
Shells from a perfect mold.
It's got that laziness of the Beck kind of.
You're burning Mother Nature's ashes for the sake of fashion.
Yeah, there is a bit of. I mean, I'm a Beck fan. But,
I don't think in any way it's there's just a feeling of the nature of the song. Literally, I mean, it's Mother Nature's ashes, but the nature of like you're observing and with a tongue in your cheek, with this kind of funky, cool, laid back vibe. I mean, that's where I'm getting it from.
Something you should be so proud.
Yeah.
You're burning Mother Nature's ashes for the sake.
See if you can find the art of conversation, Aidan. Yeah, it's a tune.
yeah. Yeah, I remember that coming out on Tom Robinson used to play that quite a bit on Radio 6 back in the day when he used to call me, tweet me on when I used to go on Twitter in the early days. He'd be very supportive actually, and he played that a few times.
We believed in it, which is beautiful.
You wouldn't get that now, I tell you. It's very difficult now to get anything played on radio.
Yeah, this is a bit more the acid beat that I'm. Yeah, for me, this was knowing you from afar. You know, this was like fucking hell. He does this as well. Jesus.
Here is the right place. Surrounded by science and technical complication. Kills conversation. Miscommunication.
You nailed it, Steve. You nailed it 8-9 years ago.
Up to this gift that we call conversation. It's lost on you now. The new generation. Don't get me wrong, I'd be pleased to provide explanations. A sweeping statement, just lost in translation.
Sweeping statements, lost his fucking hell. If that doesn't depict now, then I don't know what does. Nice one,
that's
Aidan.
true.
Nice one. So that goes out. You get some nice feedback, some belief. You bolster that kind of self-deprecating or self-loathing, which will come to loathing. We have a single then. So you and I, somewhere down the line, we have a single coming out in the next couple of weeks. Somewhere down the line, you get in touch with me, or I get in touch with you. I think first. I think I approached you first about doing something with you somewhere along the line. The band I was in, Lost Souls, you'd done some reviews and some writing for us on some of our stuff, and you liked our stuff and you believed in it, and that when obviously I'd been listening to your stuff and respected you from afar greatly, and then when my band came to an end, I was kind of making, probably similar to you at the Black Hawk point when Joe was born, I was kind of like, oh, my first boy's going to be born. I've been banging at this for however long, we came close. It's not going to be the case, so I'm going to sort of buckle up for a dad ride kind of thing. And I think I just shot one out to you to say, I think you got in touch saying, oh, what the band doing? Are you doing anything? I was like, oh, that's where we are. But I'd love to do something with you, one day let's do something. And I think I'd said that to you, and then that was that. Then a couple of years or whatever went by, things and this and that and the other. And I think we ended up doing something. We actually did something on the guitars first, didn't we?
Yes. Sunyata.
Sunyata, yeah. Sunyata we did, which was, again, you had some beautiful chords, songs put together. You had some lovely songs written, finished, like what was the first one you played me like as a finished song? Was it Break? It's fucking evading me now.
Yeah, no, I think I know the one you mean.
Break.
The melody's in there, but I can't remember the name of the track.
I think you alluded to anxiety in that with something to do with your mum coming out of. Oh, fucking hell! What was it called? Big chorus. Mind State.
Oh yes,
Mind State. Ding-a-ding. And it got a lovely guitar lick in it.
Mm.
Mind when you know you're gonna. That I remember hearing that. I was like, "Fucking hell, that's great!" And then you had these other bits, and we did. And anyway, I was going to Thailand, wasn't I? I was up and away, and we did a little farewell gig, and we put Sunyata together, and we did a little online presence, and we did a little gig and played. Well, I think we had 4 or 5 of our own tracks, didn't we? And a couple of covers.
Yeah, we did a couple of covers. We did. Oh God, who was it? We did a Radiohead one, didn't we? Karma Police. And then
Karma
we did,
Police. Yeah.
Oh God, who was that? Who was that band?
In fact, Aidan, you might have Karma Police. I think I sent you a Sunyata link in your text earlier. Sunyata live, because that was the live gig we did. We did one gig because I was going away to Thailand, and we just put on a little gig, didn't we? Like a farewell do.
Yeah, but didn't someone record that as well?
Yeah, I think if I sent Aidan a link, if you can find the link, there's like 34.5 minutes in. I think is us doing Creep, something like that. I had a little listen to it earlier because I thought, fucking hell, that was 2014. That's gone so quick.
It has, yeah. I mean, it was Turing Breaks, wasn't it? A song called. Oh, what was that song called?
The Turing Breaks cover was
Average Man.
Average Man, yeah, which is a lovely song.
Yeah, fantastic track that.
That's a lovely song. Are you searching now? Yeah, if you search, I'll tell you what, search Sunyata Live, 11, 10, 14.
I didn't know you put it on the tube.
Yeah, I just saved it on something. Just get rid of the Sam and Steve stuff. There it is, look. There it is. So if you go to like 34.5 minutes, somewhere there. Yeah, I can remember because it meant a lot to me, Steve, this gig, because obviously I had packed my bag to leave the world that I knew. So I wanted to kind of distill it and capture it. That's us in the studio. That would have been with Sim, wouldn't it?
Yes,
I think.
yeah.
Average Man, yeah. Just zip it along to 34 minutes, Aidan. 34.5 minutes, somewhere there. 34. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, this was emotional for me because I was leaving and I had friends coming from different parts of my life, you know, like friends I hadn't seen for years, and raving friends and chaos friends and school friends. And
I remember that night. It was,
We had no songs and we had to do one again, so that's quite nice.
Look at that head of hair there, Steve. On me, I
in that Barnet, actually.
Well, it's hairy then. Yeah, this was Creep then, yeah. No, that's not Creep.
No,
this was Karma Police, yeah. What else did we do? We did a Lennon cover, didn't we?
Oh, yes.
Mother.
Mother.
I
think that was the last. That was the outro.
Yeah.
Encore track, wasn't it?
I think I was subliminally leaving a message from your mother.
It was. No, you belted that one out. It was really strong.
So it's just you literally that picture, just you on a guitar and me singing, wasn't it?
Back to basics.
Yeah. Nice one, Aidan. That'll do us there. So we ended up doing that gig, which was great, and we collaborated and got in the room and played, which was nice. Because again, all things considered in this conversation so far, you respect someone's music, you respect someone's vibe, you respect someone's artistic approach. Do you want another beer?
It's bloody nice, that bit. Yeah, we'll have a bit of that, fella, please. Yeah.
We'll share one, Steve.
Yeah.
Yeah, we getting in the room together was just nice, you know.
I think just on that point, actually, what I remember from that time was it was actually me, I think, who reached out to you saying, hey, you know, what are you up to? Because I knew you'd parted ways with
Lost Souls,
thank you. And I thought, well, maybe you know, we could do something. I had a few knocking around with a few ideas. What I remember quite instinctively is that when we first got to jam in the studio, we probably spent an hour and a half just talking like this, and then we do probably 15 minutes of rehearsing. But you know, it felt just great doing that. You know, It was like we had we were sharing a lot of thoughts on things back then. You know, it was and it was a kind of way, I think, of us just you know, sort of building that understanding and trust between us, where you know, you feel like you can again relax and let that creative process come out naturally. So yeah, and sorry, I interjected.
No, not at all. No, it's nice to hear your end of the deal, because it was a mad time for me, because so much of me leaving the UK hinged on what I'd wanted to do with music. You know, I didn't know it at the time, but when it came to the crunch of like with Lost Souls, because we did have some interesting and very close to the bone situations happen, you know, where things could have happened. And then when it didn't, for me, timing is everything. You know, there's 5 kids had been born and fucking mortgages had been taken left, right and centre and blah, blah, blah. It's like a 7-year cycle, which I'm a believer in this cyclical kind of nature of things. And I just felt like, you know what, I knew that we were good enough to have, you know, succeeded and put music out there and got it to people on a wide scale. We were good enough, you know. And I could sleep with that, and that's why I felt empowered enough to go, do you know what, it's next stage, like, I don't know what it is, but I've got to let go of this, because we've done 7 years and it's going to be a long slog now to try and do something. And with the kid, it's not going to work. It's going to be hard, you know, it's harder and harder to rehearse now because of what's happening, so never mind trying to kind of reinvent or at least restructure or rebuild our, you know, trajectory. So for me, leaving to go to Thailand and leaving was like, I had to come to terms with like, okay, well, I really am just going to be tinkering. And it's not like I'd gone through my life thinking, oh, I'm going to be the next Mick Jagger. I mean, that was in there, but like, it's not until you stop something that you realise, oh, fuck, you know, and then I realised, oh, God, I am just a builder now, like in Lincoln, in this industry that's just getting swamped by health and safety. And like, there is actually that little side road out that I was, you know, pinning my escape on, is like, I've just shut that off myself.
Yeah.
So like the reality is here. So when I left for Thailand and kind of, I was making peace with like music as at the time, thinking, oh, this is part of me that's dying. Like, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to fiddle about on my own. Little did I know, it doesn't need to work like that. And off I went to Thailand, having the Sun Yata thing kind of echoing in the back of my mind, thinking, fucking hell, some great songs there. I remember driving around in Thailand in the first few weeks, and we'd been in the studio and recorded 4 of our tracks from Sun Yata, didn't we? The Walls in This Place Are Made of Love,
That's right.
Mind State, I think Return to the Dirt and another one. And I can remember listening to them driving around in town and thinking, fucking hell, you know, these might be the best things that I've been part of, and I've just fucked up, you know, and having all this confusion.
Yeah, man.
And thinking like, you know, because when we did Walls in This Place, I was like, fucking, this is like Simon and Garfunkel. This is like this mad dancing kind of fucking hell. There's all sorts of wonderful stuff happening here. And I remember thinking, oh, this is great, but like, what have I done? And then coming to, you know, and blah, blah, blah. And anyway, however long goes by, and I get an email from you saying, look, how you doing? Hope everything's cool. I've jumped back on the, you know, the analog. I've got this idea. Would you be up for putting something on it? I think it just wants like a bit of a vocal, whatever you think. Just see what you think.
Yeah.
And I think that was New Beginnings.
Aye, yeah, it was.
You sent me a couple, but it was New Beginnings I think I did first. And at the time I was watching Peaky Blinders, and it just had this really familiar. And you've got a crafty way of doing this. You can make like digital music. I always refer to it as like, it's like retro future, because you managed to encapsulate something that's meaningful from the past, some of these signatures of good melody and good arrangement and good architecture. And whether you're doing it with a guitar or whether you're doing it with beeps and bleeps, it's you capture it. And it comes to me and it's really familiar. And I remember thinking, God, this isn't my usual boat. I'm out of my depth here. As much as I appreciate Andrenachrome from afar, I've only ever made like guitar music. I've never been a DJ. I've never, I loved house music, loved hardcore, but I never envisaged making anything. So then I thought, what, this is pretty cool, because I'd take it. The only thing I had kept from my life's work was my guitar and my little Mac and my monitors.
Yeah.
So I was like, Alex, Steve sent me a track. And the other thing that was happening for me was like how bizarre it is to be on the other side of the world now and retain conversation in real time on fucking FaceTime or whatever, or get an email. I'd get an email from you and get the little golden envelope in my inbox, think, oh, brilliant, that's a song. And then I would plug the song in, and then I would sing on the song and send it back to you. And you'd go, yeah, that's great, it's great, I'm going to mix that and I'll send you. And then I get it back and you've mixed it in, and oh, wow. So I remember thinking, oh, right, this is just, as much as I'm not sure sonically where I'm going here, let's just have a whirl. And then we did that, and I sent you something back, and you were like, oh, wicked, that's great, nice one. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll try and do a little visual for it. We'll do a little video for it, because then it'll carry better on the internet. And then you emailed me back, however, few weeks, whatever, I don't know what the timeline was, but you were like, you've got 6 music and all that out there. It's like, yeah. Oh, you have to put it on fucking Saturday because Tom Robinson's show, they're going to play that track. And I was like, I'm sat in my garden in Thailand, like, listening to this cacophony of fucking jungle life, looking at a mountain, thinking, what have I done? Like, I'm living in Thailand, my little boy's running around in nappy. It's 10 o'clock at night. There's cobras in my garden and shit. And then I'm having a beer and a smoke, and like you messaged me that, and I think, Alf, and I chuckle to myself. I think, how mad is it, eh? I kind of make peace with, okay, I didn't make it in music. That sounds like a strategy, kind of summarization, but it's not. It's like my dream to make music and to somehow follow this path is I've kind of made peace with it, and I haven't done it. And I've made peace with it, and I feel strong for that, and I can sleep at night because my music was great, but here I am, I'm brave, and I'm going into this new world. And then I'm sat here, and I've emailed back, and I've managed to make music with one of my mates from Lincoln, from Asia, and without any clinging or longing or fucking loading it with like, we'll get a gig there, and then we'll do that, and then we're just like, oh no, he sent me something, that's ace, I get to make some music from Asia with my mate. And then it's like a message, oh, it's going to be on BBC Six Music, they're going to play it, blah, blah, blah. And I'm sat in the garden, and then track 2 comes on, and Tom Robinson or whoever it was gives it the, this is blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, fucking hell, that's weird. I sang that in this little fucking room in Bangsaray, in Thailand, in a fishing village province of Thailand. And it's getting played on BBC Six Music in London and England, where I spent my whole fucking life trying to get music onto the radio. And this thing's happened
7,000 miles away now.
Yeah, and so much was happening for me within that, like was enveloped in the whole thing of being away from people but still being with them because of the internet and all of that stuff. And like some of my friends were messaging me who didn't realise that I'd gone because I was so active still on Facebook and whatever with Andrenachrome. So I'm pumping videos out and put, so people are kind of like, who you haven't seen since school. They still think you're in North Icombe or wherever the fuck you are. But you're not, you're in Bangsaray. It's such a bizarre thing it was. It's like we were still active, so we were making more music than ever. So that was the start of the journey for me coming in. So it'd be interesting for me to hear from you. So when you sort of reach out to me and say, what about singing a couple of bits on these songs and what have you? And I do, obviously that can be a fork in the road. That can be like, oh yeah, nice one. Or no, this ain't going to work. So obviously something worked. So did it give, I'm anticipating how I would be with it. Is it like, you mentioned, you alluded to earlier, kind of the idea that you'd pass it on to somebody and you get that little lift. I know when somebody else contributes something, it kind of takes away a little bit of that responsibility, and you can enjoy it more because it's not just from you. You know, if it marries.
Yeah.
If it marries.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. And I think, so that time, you'd gone to Thailand, pissed off to Thailand. I thought, oh, great. I just thought we're getting something together. And, you couldn't get further away if you wanted, So I thought, well, what am I going to do now? I sort of slumped down in my chair a bit, figuratively speaking, and tried to work out my next move. And then, and how it came about really, I think, was a friend of my wife, Sarah, her boyfriend, Ben, was they came round one night for some food and that, and stayed over. And he goes, oh, I've got a cracked copy of Logic, Logic X if you want it. I was like, well, I've never used Logic. I've always been Cubase. And I'm boring people probably listening, but this is a sequencer software called a digital audio workstation, right?
DAW.
Yeah. And anyway, we put it on my Mac, and that was it. He left me to it, and so I started arsing about with it for a while, and I thought, Jesus, this is just like the workflow and everything about it was just really tuned in to being creative. So I thought, I quite fancy making some more electronic music, but maybe a little bit more sort of fall to the floor stuff, really, rather than the previous Andrenachrome, which is quite slow and introspective and a bit like sort of the Beck vocal. I thought, no, I don't think I want to go down that road anymore. I kind of want to change direction. And so I made a load of stuff, and some of it was okay, but again, I put it out on another Andrenachrome sort of album, which was really a bunch of demos, and New Beginnings was on that as well as another track called Golden Gates. If you remember that.
Gates, yeah, that was
a great track. But the thing I didn't do with that was I should have really taken that away, knowing what I know now. That could have been much better mixed and produced, but and so there were demos, but and that sort of was the next round of Andrenachrome, and I don't think I should have released that. I should have held on to them and thought they're ideas. Let's not put them out, but it's a learning process, and I think I know where this might be going. And so after that was kind of like 20 or 30 tracks in. Out came some more stuff, and that was kind of like the early stuff we released properly, which was what was the first one we did that got the Radio 1 play? That was
so we got so for the timeline for people. So in that year that I was gone, in accordance with the timeline you've just put there, Steve, New Beginnings, the album with the 10 tracks. I think I featured on like 3 of them as Sam Souls.
Yes, that's right.
So I came in on Something Is Nothing, Golden Gates, and New Beginnings, I think, and did videos for them. And New Beginnings got plays and on BBC Six Music, and stuff happened. And as you say, I was away. Then it was only a year, and I was coming back because it didn't work out. And people who follow the podcast know. Yeah. So in that time, we were kind of ticking over on them anyway, and you'd had that vibe. So when I got back, I remember by the time I got settled, I think we caught up, obviously, and it was like, should we go in a room and have a fuck about and a fiddle about with this? And I think by then the Skywalker had been done. I think I'd done a vocal on Skywalker in Thailand, and that turn that you're talking about had started to happen, and I demoed that. Then we went in the room, and then it was like, okay, let's kick on. And then we hit the ground running at that point, didn't we? And I think we had BBC Introducing jumped on us locally and really championed us and really got behind us. And there's a lineage for people who follow any of that stuff, budding bands out there. You get into your local regional BBC Introducing, and that whole platform is about peer review, I guess, and people giving you the nudge, and you go up to the wider area, and then eventually you might get down to the Radio 1 for the plays on there, and then who knows what. And we got to the Radio 1 level, at which point we got contact from a label, didn't we, down south, Cutler Rock, with the Rockstar label, who are part of or originate from the skint culture.
Yes.
You know, the big beat,
beat.
the big beat situation, and then that was like, whoa, cool. He really liked it, and there was talk of him sort of stepping stoning into skint and all sorts of things. Anyway, we signed with Rockstar, didn't we? And we had a little deal, and I think Follow had been played on Radio 1. We'd had stuff on BBC Six Music, and we were like, fucking hell, making tunes and all sorts of, you know, you were sending stuff over that was kind of all within this field, but it's moving everywhere. It's really exciting. But you jump back in there, Steve. We did some those early stuff when I got back, and we were probably still finding our sound, weren't we? Would you say?
I think that was when the penny dropped. I think for me personally, I think we found a formula where it was kind of. It was a bit more than just, and this is what Lee always said about us, who was our label manager, was like you're connecting two different worlds almost, where you bring in, sort of song and smashing it together with, with Four to the Floor dance music, but if you listen, if you kick back and listen a little bit more. There's something a bit deeper in there as well for the ones who want to do that. It's not all you can go out and sort of jive.
Hook, line, and sinker. Yeah.
Or you can listen to it in your cans on your commute or in your your personal quiet space, and you can hear Sam sort of pontificating on all kinds of different cosmic things. So I liked that. I love that feedback. And I think on that first release, which was what Lee released, which was...
Oh, the first track we put out with Rockstar was... Dung, 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 dung,
yes.
dung. Fucking what's it called, Steve? We're not
We're
not good at the industry side of this, are we? Fucking hell.
I'm going to find it, because I've completely forgotten.
Oh, my God. Dung, 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 dung. I remember because it was, for me anyway, lyrically, it was a lot to do with like psychedelic. Fucking hell. Trip with me.
Yes, thank you.
Psychedelic. Trip with me. Yeah, trip with
so
me.
Lee pulled that out as a first promo, and the feedback was kind of like, this is like Underworld, how Underworld should sound now, which is what I thought was...
Fucking hell, we'll take that.
I thought, I'll have that, and I'll drink it and do everything I can with it. That was a fabulous sort of bit of feedback we got, and it did feel like that was definitely where it was at, so it felt like we'd sort of, I think we'd cracked it there. We'd sort of nailed the direction we were going in and the sound, and then sort of more stuff came out the back of that, and we had a bit of a purple patch, didn't we, of creativity, where we knocked probably 20 tracks together over a space of 2 years. And then we started to think about, Lee released another couple of singles, I think.
Yep.
Over that time. Unfortunately, he was embroiled in personal issues, and then started to work for one. He got work with Ronnie Size as label manager, didn't he? And Ronnie Size basically took him and took him on as basically his label manager, and that was him
full time up to his neck in organising Full Cycle, wasn't it?
So he couldn't commit to us anymore, and we kind of saw the wood for the trees anyway on that, and smelt the coffee and everything else. So that's when we decided we'd go rogue and set up our own label, didn't we? Electric Hush, and it was a kind of, again, probably a bit of an ambitious strategy, but what else?
I think it is. It's all you've got now.
Do? Yeah, and I think everyone's at that point now in music today. It's kind of like there's no direct connection or any kind of interface between when people who make quality music and the offering it in the in the market.
Yeah.
There's no direct link at all. You've got all these platforms like SoundCloud and wherever else all these other platforms. You can put it on Spotify, you can put it anywhere you want, but there's still no direct interface into the public domain, and that's where the gap is. And and that's where all the vacuum is really, and also where all the sharks are, as we learn.
Fucking hell, yeah, it's a different,
tough way,
different
hard
game
way.
now, isn't it? You know, because we have that exciting meeting where we go, do you know what? We get it, like you say, with the label. They're busy. We've got to crack on, you know. So let's do it ourselves anyway. So we put together Electric Hush, which was exciting to do. And yeah, you spend a few quid, but fuck it, you know. We're not jet skiing, are we, or motocrossing or whatever, you know. People will spend money doing their shit. So let's do it. And we did it, and we did it well, and we did a good job of it, and it stands to this day. And, you know, that gap that you talk of, for me, what was mesmerising to me, having a few years out of the game from the Lost Souls days, and I've told the story about Lost Souls, I think even recently on the Sean Atwood podcast, where I mentioned, you know, when we went to head of A&R, Jody Camage at Kensington there for Universal, he was like, look, let me give you an example. Here's the box of CDs everybody sends me. There's a great one. There's a brochure. There's a fucking someone scribbled on a CD. He said, look, turned his screen round, went on YouTube and said, this lad here has got 1 million hits. You know, so that whole world was changing, you know, and by the time we got to Andrenachrome, we're going, right, okay, let's do this. I found myself on a crash course of how to do social media.
Yeah.
Hashtag this, fucking tag them, connect this, fucking mention them, at fucking so-and-so, who made it? Oh, Macintosh, Moog. Like, fuck me. And because how I work is I try and absorb myself, okay, what is the, you know, the groundworks here? I need to know it. And then once I know that, I can work my way out. I was so deep in that, thinking, fucking hell, this is like,
It was soul destroying for me.
yes, it is. It's soul destroying. And I'm, you know, I'm the impetuous, I'm the scrappy do of us, let's say. So I'm like, right, fucking, let's get in there. And, you know, I enjoy making video and all that stuff anyway. So that bit's cool for me. But even for me, it was like such a drag. And I was thinking, this is no longer about the music. Like, we've got great music here. And it doesn't matter how great it is, because it's just a fucking minefield of like, we'll promote you and get you fucking X amount of play, you know, and you get these Spotify promo only and this and that and the other and this many listens, and you just lose your way.
Yeah.
You lose your way.
Yeah, you do. And I think, I don't know, we fell into a bit of a trap of being told and dictated to by various people who had invested interests, obviously, because they were who was the guys we were with who did our first distribution? I can't remember the name. Who's that guy? Lee somebody, who's on Twitter and tells everyone that they can be earning huge amounts of money from
God. Yeah.
And the guy talks also, and I'm not going to say his name on your show, but you know, there's a lot of people out there who talk
the
complete
talk.
fantasy. They talk the talk, right? And they tell a great story about how, you know, you as an independent artist can be successful now. It's all open to you. You know, you just know you've got to plough the field. It's there. All the tools are there. Will enable you. It's just fantasy. It really is fantasy. And unfortunately, you know, when you're hungry for it, you just, it's music to your ears. You know, it's what you want to hear. So you think, okay, yeah, let's hedge our bets. And by the time, you know, you've gone through that process, you know, probably halfway through it, it's just you've been
Duped.
You've been clobbered again. You know. I think we got that quite early on, so we switched to a different distributor. But you know, even so, that doesn't really change things. And you know, you realise then that there's so much to navigate, and there's so many people out there keen to take everything you've got financially, promise you the moon on a stick, and ultimately, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work, and I don't care what anyone says out there and what stories they tell. There's people every day I see coming up on Facebook and Twitter and social media saying that, you know, I discovered this artist and I made them, you know, they're now getting 50,000 plays a day on Spotify. But it's all bullshit, because when you start to look behind all that, it's not actually true. And this is what I find really, really, I mean, I suppose the industry's always been like that to a degree, but
well, it mirrors again, like I was saying earlier, Steve, about for me, like the music industry is kind of like a precursor to like where we are in the wider world of just profit and ownership and contract and fucking expression and everything's just so business orientated now. You know, and this is why I love finding the Brian Jonestown massacre in the last couple of months, because like schooling myself with Anton Newcomb, who again spiritually there's like an energy coming through him that reminds me so much of my friend Wade, who I lost last year. And Wade was a big fan of this band, which I now know in retrospect when I think back to the times we listened to records and the things he quotes, and even looking at Anton, how much Wade took from him, you know. But he's famed for his output. I will put you onto him because I think you'll really take from him. Famed for his output, and also by kind of being a kid who should have been in the 60s because his ear for just that 60s vibe music, the sound, the authenticity of the sound, the authenticity of melody, lyric, everything, like to do that simple thing so well, like it should have been like the band from the 60s that you didn't hear, as well as going into the shoegaze and that American sort of opiate thing. But he always was like self-destructive in the sense that like we all want our music to get to as many ears as possible, but he couldn't bear the idea of the industry, of ownership, of contract, of trying to get the hi-hat right 6 months down the line. He was just like, that's the expression, I'm not going to make it perfect, it is what it is, it's a moving kind of,
it's a living organism.
And it's expression of this moment, and he was his output. So I've really enjoyed listening to him, and he's been a long time in the game, and they're still really successful, and they've got probably 1 million monthly whatever fucking, but he always kept his music available for free. He utilised every option, you know, used the internet, didn't shy away from it. He wasn't a Luddite, but he played it smooth and played it tight with the record execs. I mean, the Dandy Warhols, they've got a documentary called Dig. For people who might be intrigued or may not know, there's a film called Dig. I think it's like early 2000s. Made them huge because the Dandy Warhols who produced actually the film about them, and it's a load of footage over a load of years from their early days, and them and the Dandy Warhols are sort of close. Right. And the Dandies obviously went big, didn't they, with Bohemian Like You and all that, and I think, was it 13 Tales from Urban Bohemia or something, that record? And Anton sort of is very, he's visionary, and you see like how he talks about how you rise and fall to the shout of Capitol Records or whatever it was. So check Dig out if you do come across it. But for me, he's been in my little renaissance of at least just making music for my own personal thing. It's been really refreshing getting that perspective back and knowing that those people are out there.
Yeah, that's encouraging. It's encouraging, and there's a lot of stories like that, I think, as well. And there's two ways of looking at that, I suppose, if you take that away and dissect it, and that is people like him have been measured about it and realised that they'd rather play the long game, really, and rather than go for the fanfare and the spoiled and the early sort of meteoric rise, you know, like the Dandy Warhols, who've kind of shot through the atmosphere, back down again, and never seen since, you know, where he's played the long game, he's brought his fans on that journey with him. It's become a very tight, traditional artist-fan relationship. That's authentic, and people know it when they see it and when they hear it. So
yeah, they do.
They don't need to be oversold it. And I think the thing I take from where, you know, what we experience, which is very kind of at the bottom end of the rung, you know, is that, and we've had time to reflect, and I think about it now, and it doesn't bother me now because, you know, I've moved on and we've still made some, what I consider some quality material, and I've had time to think and reflect on it and think, well, yeah, I think my probably intention from the start was we should probably do this a long game way and not think about submitting to the hashtag and the playlist and the kind of the machine of building up and hyping, the hype machine.
Hype machine. It is the hype fucking machine.
And
it is.
And having to pay to play and all these kind of horrible things that fundamentally I just go against everything in my...
They do. They rip it all apart at the seams, don't they? That magic, that moment, that healing yourself by picking the instrument up and putting those words on the paper and creating a melody or creating a sound that somebody else hears and goes, fucking hell, that's lovely, then turns into it enters the machine. And then it all distorts and breaks.
It mangles it all up and it comes out the other side like a rotten corpse. And it's, you know, that's kind of where Andrenachrome comes from. An interesting link, because Hunter S. Thompson talks, there's a very, very famous paragraph he talks about the music industry, the long, shallow money trench. I won't quote it ad verbatim because I can't remember it.
It's full of robbers and thieves and you know,
and they're just the good guys.
Yeah,
you know, and that's kind of, that plays into that, and it's so true. He was right.
I'm really pleased you said that, because as we've experienced with a couple of trolls, you know, Andrenachrome in the current climate in the last few years, you know, I think a lot of people associate Andrenachrome with elite fucking witchcraft and fucking child killing and all sorts of stuff, right?
Which blew me completely.
Well, but that's a phenomenon. Like you've said yourself, this band was named that 10 years ago, okay? Yeah, based on what you've just said, the Hunter S. Thompson vibe, the adrenaline molecule, the fucking idea that, you know, you've switched on for the thing. As conspiracy theories, or at least online chat, let's call it, sort of develops, I think there's a lot of kind of top shelf one line understandings of things. So we had a couple of American guys just hitting us, didn't they, saying, you know, great music, but you know, why are you called Andrenachrome? Do you realise, you know, that you're blood sucking, children killing, blah 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 blah? And I'm like, oh no, right, I get it, because you've watched a fucking whatever you've just watched about fucking Jacob Rothschild eating a child, yeah. Okay, get it, but like there's a lot more going on here, so looking into it. So we've experienced some of that, haven't we? But I had it recently. I just went on Sean Atwood's podcast, which is a big podcast in the UK, you know, and there's been thousands and thousands of views, and we talk about music, we talk about everything, and one of the comments was, you know, blah blah blah, Andrenachrome. I'm like, God, man,
yeah. I didn't realise it was such an bloody emotive. Well, it's conspiracy theory, because I mean, I promoted one of our videos. I think it was I can't remember which one it was. It might have been not Burn the Witch, but the one after. All the Stars Explode. Not. Oh yes, it was that. Yeah, it was that. It was that track, and I promoted that on Facebook. I did quite a targeted campaign, I thought, and I had about 10 comments on there, amongst others, all gunning for us. Yeah, saying, "Look at these, you know, these guys are weirdos. They're obviously into child exploitation." I thought, I've got to delete this. I had to take it down. Because I just thought, I can't handle this. No, I'm not doing this. This is getting ridiculous. So I took it down in the end. But it's one of those sweeping kind of top line conspiracies, like the darkest of the dark. You know, that's the bit where all this money laundering and all this control and all this fucking fake moon landings, it all ends with eating a kid, which it may well do, right? Yeah, but Andrenachrome was named out of much more philosophical and wondrous, you know, than the last 5 years internet kind of fodder. Yes. Which brings me on to where we are now, as you've taken us on that journey, Steve. You know, we were in 2019. We were kind of like putting the live show together, weren't we? And we'd set up the record label Electric Hush. We'd put out some singles off our own back. We were slugging it out on our own and building towards going out live and putting some dates together and hitting some festivals, and it was looking good. And we did our first festival, which was the 2Q Festival. And you mentioned Working Men's Club. We played on the festival with those guys. They were on there, and there were some big bands. And it went really well. We got kind of bundled in last minute, and we got put in like a garage band kind of venue, didn't we? With a load of like, you know, guitar band sort of Route 1 bands, and here we were popped up in the middle, kind of like this weird Depeche Mode kind of Daft Punk amalgamation of
Joy Division, yeah, in the middle of it all, and we actually got a really cool response. It kind of took people by surprise, didn't it?
It did, yeah. We got. I was quite nervous about that when we got there. I thought, I don't know if this is the right venue to be doing this. We were right, like you say, we were right amongst. There was a sort of youngish sort of shoegaze band on before us, and then after, no, not before, they were there when we were playing, when we turned up with all the gear, and then there was this kind of sort of death, I wouldn't say death metal-y band, but they were sort of very, very hardcore metal band, metal punk. I don't know, I'm just throwing genres into a
just pull up Andrenachrome on Instagram, Aidan, and there is, I think I did a little video of this gig. It was a strange thing to be thrown in on.
I was kind of, it was, and I thought, scouting around thinking, I'm not sure this is going to go down very well at all. So the anxiety builds up. I thought, oh no, we'll be all right. We'll just have to do it. And the next thing I know, we were on.
Yes.
And I'm looking up, and the whole place is packed, and there's people moving on the floor. I thought, okay, and yeah. I really enjoyed it. I came out of there thinking...
Well, we got a load of people. We got stopped by people, which is always a nice thing. If you scroll down, in fact, we ended up in Jim's record shop that day.
Yes.
Keep going down, which was nice. Keep going, I think, he says. Too cute. It might be...
Yeah.
Keep going up, back up. There, look. Yeah, that's the one.
Yes.
So this was gig day. That's in this very studio, Steve, before it was a podcast studio.
Someone said I look like Jurgen Klopp, didn't they?
Yes.
Came into it.
You did. You look like Jurgen Klopp on a weekend.
Mm.
Oh, the audio's messing about. Here we go. Loading up.
Tour bus.
We was really chuffed as well, weren't we? We really thinking, fucking hell, we ain't got hardly any gear. It's great, this is. Lugging shit all over the place. Just got one load of gear. That sign's still proud in this place, look.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, so these guys had just watched like a pretty, like you say, metal band. Not this kind of music.
No, this was, must have been a massive curveball, really, if you think about it. Jesus.
This track playing is Wall of Silence, which again, Steve, you nailed an internet and the echo chamber. So I think we cut to live in a minute.
Yes.
Yeah, man.
See, this kind of music needs lights, it needs atmospheres. And
well, we went on to watch Working Men's Club, didn't we? Nice one, Aidan. Yeah. We went on to watch Working Men's Club, and I'd said to you, because I think I'd talked to the promoters and was trying to wangle us into that venue because I'd been there. And it would have been perfect for us, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah, that's what you wanted.
If we'd have been in there, oh, those lights, that rig, that stage, that darkness, that low ceiling, that's the place for that kind of music. But we did well, at the end of the day, we got put in where we got put in, and there's nothing better than when there's a sizable crowd, which there was, not just in that place, but in and around the place, and you're mooching through, and it's one of these kind of Great Escape kind of gigs, isn't it, where all the venues are taken over in the town, and you can go to different venues at different times to see different bands. And multiple people stopping and saying, "Hi, up, mate, I'm from Barnsley and I saw you. You were in that pub earlier, weren't you?" And I thought that were really good, mate. I weren't expecting that.
Yeah. We got a lot of that, and I think that
nice one.
I think to be honest, we nobody knew who we were. That's what that's why you cut your teeth in. It's and it's sort of against all my sort of anticipations, it worked, and there was a really nice vibe after it, and we got. And it gave you that little buzz, and I thought, well, if we can do it in a place like this where there's kind of there's nothing else to enhance what we're doing.
There's a dartboard behind us.
There's a dartboard behind us. There's a fucking frying pan and a little mini oven with 2 hot plates on it. You couldn't get any more kind of domestic than that. And whereas without all that and a load of visuals and lights, come on, it's right for it. So we were. I think off the back of that, we were thinking, let's try and let's push for another one in 2020, and then step it up to a.
And then we arrived where we arrived, don't we? Which is fucking. Everybody knows the story from then on. So I think we're coming back to what you'd said about those 20 odd tunes that we'd done, and we'd probably mixed with George Schilling. We've mixed a record's worth, haven't we? 12, 13 tracks we've mixed and mastered and got to as good as they're going to be in a sonic setting. And we've released, I think we've done 5 or 6 tracks at this point.
So this Fear Loathing is our 7th.
Okay, so if you pull up Spotify, Aidan, Andrenachrome on Spotify, so I think coming back to that legacy, coming back to that timestamp, I feel like we just released the songs. Just because we've done them, we've written them, we've expressed them, we've mixed them, we've slaved over them, and we just put them out. And then there's going to be a day in the future. We might end up being a bit like Nick Drake,
Well, yeah, I mean, that's it.
There's a load of kids in the future, in 2 generations' time, go, fucking hell, have you heard this band, Andrenachrome?
I think we had...
so there we go. Look what we've got. We've got Show
We had Dip Your Ghost remix, Burn Your Witch. And
which went down great. The Dip Your Ghost remix, which powerful Ollie and Tommy, who've been in and done podcasts, good friends of ours, that got put on, that was on some kind of compilation. That got put on like quite a widespread compilation, that Burn the Witch remix. Wall of Silence, I think that's you on the vocal. That track is... just fucking, you just nailed the current climate of internet culture and everybody's voice just bellowing at everybody else, and you nailed that. Power of Nightmares, which was our first release under our label, wasn't it? And we did the video with 40 Miles West, which was cracking, which recently got used with the Sean Atwood advert or trailer. Yep. Burn the Witch, which was bang moody, perfect timing for me signing off my ex-missus. Yeah. I'm really proud of them, and I think we've got there in this conversation. That feeling that you want to get your music to as many ears as possible, and you want someone to take something lovely from it, positively or whatever the fuck it is. But I really am at a point now where the world is, who fucking knows what's going on with the world, and just knowing that we can go there and that music's there, it is there. People will find it, people will listen to it, people will take from it, and we can go back to it as well. That means a lot to me. Because we've all got an hard drive of a shitload of music on, haven't we, somewhere? I've got those demos and I've got those nearly finished songs. And that, like I said to you earlier, one day Joe's going to come downstairs and he is going to be interested in, Dad, what do you make music? What where is it? What? To be able to just go, you fire in there, mate. There it is. It's there. It's just in line with everything else that you listen to. It's there. It's time stamped. It's a record of whatever the fuck was going through our heads at that moment.
Yeah, I think as soon as you sort of take or strip away all the sort of, I need to get this to as many people and I need to be making something out of this music pressure. You strip all that away and don't try too hard to go down that road of turning into a pimp almost of your music. The pressure's completely off, and whatever comes is quite a beautiful bonus, really.
Gift,
anything that comes through that just to follow, some feedback, additional plays that just seem to crop up on some of those tracks, which I've noticed recently. Actually, anything like that is just that's nice, and I'll take that, and that's all I need. I don't,
that's how I feel now.
Expectations
Steve.
have completely changed. And the whole kind of I need to be successful in music sort of story you tell yourself is all based on kind of reward and the external sort of attribution of success, whereas really, if you're making music you think is at the level and you've pushed yourself and you've got it to a place where you think that is, I'm so proud of that.
That's it.
That's all that matters, isn't it? You know, so
I love that.
that's where I'm kind of at now with the whole music game.
It's a peaceful place, Steve, isn't it? It's a nice place. It's a nice place, and you know, like I said, for me, when I kind of left Lost Souls in a kind of micro way, I did get a feeling of this. I did find some peace in going, okay, yeah, that thing that, because I did tell myself the story of like, you know, because I didn't like my job and I bunked out of college and I kind of like, well, I'm going to do music. So there was a part of me that was like hanging on to that, which is something that actually works opposites and pushes it away. But I did make some peace and thought, you know what, that's cool. It's cool. I'm proud of what we did and whatever happens now. And then whatever did happen was this. It was like, fuck me. And then we got a record deal and then we put music out and yeah, then we learnt the next lessons that we've just discussed. And now as we sit here now, it's been lovely to have you here tonight and chat and sort of cover this, because we talk, Andrenachrome gets mentioned a lot because obviously this podcast is me ranting and a lot of my story comes out, so it's probably put a few pieces together for people who do stick around. Where we are now and with what we've done, and who knows what's going to happen in the future, you know, we'd be doing ourselves an injustice to not put those songs in that list that we've done, that we've finished, that we've mixed, you know. So Fear and Loathing, which is the next one, which is beautiful because it's Fear and Loathing, and as you mentioned the name Andrenachrome, Hunter S. Thompson being an influence with that scathing reality check on the music industry, not fucking Child's Blood, right?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Oh.
Fear and Loathing is a track that when I played it to some of my trusted friends, one of the critiques or the sort of statements that came back was, wow, man, that's fucking cool. That's like Nick Drake. That's like Nick Cave on Ease. And for a second, I had to think about it as like, and I thought, oh, I think I know what he's saying. Back to the language, aren't we? I think I know what he's saying there. It's like, it's got that kind of, there's a morose, there's some undertone of, there's something somber in there, but there's also this kind of, there is a euphoric pulling together somewhere in it as well.
I think, that's a very good critique and observation by that person. And that's where it, to be fair, that's where it came from me. It was there was a bit of angst in there, I think, a bit of darkness, and I wanted to make something in my imagination. When I closed my eyes, I wanted something that, imagine yourself in the most underground, and this is probably my own personal experience playing into this. Is there was nights I used to go to back in sort of 20, 25, whatever years ago, where I'd go to the most probably underground club you could imagine, where there was dogs in there. You know, there were people, there was travellers, there was rockers in there. There was people of all different diverse cultures in there, almost sort of in this sweaty space where you couldn't see the DJ. It didn't matter where. You weren't praying to a DJ. You know, they were off in some, you know, stinky corner behind a caminetting. And it didn't matter. Yeah. But and the lights were low, and all you could see was people's eyes, and there was this kind of euphoric but yet spiritual. And I know that sounds quite hippie, but there was that experience of spiritual togetherness and a sort of experience you don't often get from day to day, let's be fair. Yeah, no, I agree. But there was also like an undercurrent of real energy, massive amounts of energy coming from not just from the music, but from the surrounding environment. So I wanted to try and put that into a track, basically. And, you know, the bass line is kind of disco-esque, I guess, even though it's a little bit more sinister.
I messaged you earlier, Aidan. Pull up that link, Fear and Loathing. There's just a thumbnail kind of single clip for it. If we can put that on, we'll finish with that. Yeah, so you've that's the vibe that's coming through you when you're writing it. You can feel that. Just
something very, very, just real underground and raw, and just really pulling you into a different world. And your vocal on that is just the icing on the cake, because it's like very gothic.
Yeah, it's one of the first ones where I really took a left turn off Main Street for me. I like dropped the octaves real low. I just felt whatever that thing is that you're putting in it there, that because the way the bass, you know, that bass line's melodic, but it's got there's a darkness to it. At the same time that there's a euphoria to it, which is a lovely combination. And it drew me down into a place that I'd never been before. And again, you sort of start doing this thing, oh, if I can just go with this, and doubt it and go, oh God, that's not me though. Is that me? Is that me doing somebody else? Is that me doing Nick Cave? I never even thought that, but looking back, am I just taking on something else? But like whatever it was,
whatever comes out.
Yeah.
I mean, it might have been in the back of your mind, but it didn't come out to me like that. I mean, but I know where that comes from, the Nick Cave thing, and I know when I heard it, I thought this is this just suits this is it, because it's brought the whole, for me, in fact it's enhanced. Well, I didn't expect that to come back. I thought if I heard this somewhere, this would be like that moment in my mind, almost very tribal energy. You know, and
there is actually, it's there is
something dark and very just real energy underneath it. You know.
When's this out, Steve?
7th of May, 2021.
7th of May, is that a Monday?
Friday
the 7th of May.
Yeah.
So a couple of weeks' time from the point of this recording. This is Fear and Loathing Andrenachrome. Yeah, man. That's a beast.
It's a monster, isn't it?
It's a beast of a track. It's a beast of a track, you know. And there's, for me anyway, I mean, in light of this conversation, you know, there's enough, you know, with the timeline that we've had with the music, you know, it's always the same. You come back and you listen, you know, and it'll either fucking pull your pants down, what were you thinking, or you go, fucking hell, no, I remember that's what that was all about. Yeah, it's a juggernaut. That's a juggernaut. So that's out on the 7th.
Yes, 7th of May. Yeah,
7th of May. So I will give that a shout, and we'll put that out there. As I was sort of nodding away and dancing to that, I was just looking at this, which for people who can't see in the studio, we've got a framed Lost Souls poster from the Rug Cutter Boys.
Ah, yes.
Mr. Sean Bowden gifted me that when he was in here recently.
Bless him. Yeah.
And at this time as we talk, Sean's no longer with us, which was a real shock. And I know you guys went way back, much further than I. So that was a real shame.
Oh yeah, it's a tragedy actually. I've not seen Sean for probably maybe 4 or 5 years, but we always kept in touch, you know, as you do through, you know, social media, Facebook and things. He wasn't a big player in that, but he was always present. I was always keeping track of what he was up to. You know, funnily enough, last year, sort of August, September time, you know, he was trying to convince me to do an Andrenachrome DJ set. One of his... No, actually, no, it was before... No, it was around this time last year, I think. And it was a case of, you know, we're gonna do a night... can't remember where it was, to be honest. He had a few things lined up, as you know, from when they were here.
The ultrasound guys, yeah.
And,
Sean and
well, there was
Jackie.
sort of back and forth about, you know, do you want to do a live set or DJ? And I said, well, I think probably, you know, for your night, I think a DJ set would probably work better, but I haven't done it for... I'm stepping back 20 years. I don't think I'm up for this, to be honest. I was working with vinyl then, and then all that's gone, you know. And even then, I sort of knew I'd sort of... When Sean was on, you know, I would hand over to Sean and say, just take over because I can't do this anymore. He was the guy who would, just wherever he was, would just recover it and just you know,
keep
deliver.
it together, yeah.
Yeah, he would deliver every time, 100%. Just a natural born talent. And so, you know, when he asked me, I was umming and ahhing about it. He knows I'm like this. He knew I was always a bit of a, you know, I wouldn't say, he was always kind of complaining at me that I wasn't committed enough sometimes, a bit lazy.
When he came, well, you probably saw the podcast, Steve, you know, he when Rabs came up, he was like, fuck, man, what a talented lad.
Oh, bless him.
And, you know, he said the same. He says, you know, he just fucking get him to believe how good he is.
Oh, that's lovely to hear. I do remember I did put this on there, the what's their site called now? They do a night called on
the My House Your House thing on the platform.
Yeah, they've got their own Facebook page called it's not
Ultrasound.
Ultrasound.
Yeah.
I did put a tribute on there just to say that I remember Sean somewhere in Nottingham. We'd gone to do a house party. It was on the top floor of a student house, and Sean was with me, just stood next to me, and I was DJing. I was starting to think, I can't do this anymore. I'm losing it. It's not happening. And Sean just saying, can I have a go? Because I think I'd like to, you know, start doing a bit more DJing. I said, yeah, fill your boots, because I've had enough. I didn't know what, you know, didn't know anything about how good he was or whether he'd done any, you know, done any sort of DJing before, and he just stepped into it like a hand in glove, you know. And that was it. And it was just kind of like, you knew he was just solid. He would deliver every single time. And his taste in music was quite sublime. He just put things together, and it was effortless, to be honest. Every time as well. You know, there was no inconsistency. It was always, you knew when Sean was playing, and he knew his selection was going to be well thought out, and you know, and it was part of him. So bless him, and you know I will miss him. I really miss him, because I was almost convincing myself. I mean, he almost had me going to Nottingham, buying you know, some CDJs.
Really?
You know, I was that far committed.
So that what a nod that is, though, because he knows that that's in you, and trust enough, and belief enough, and all the things we've kind of covered tonight. That language, that feeling when you feel comfortable with somebody, when somebody can instill the ability or the belief in yourself to go, actually, I have got something to get out, and you have twisted my arm, or you've made me see, or you've helped me get past whatever the obstacle, or, you know, that is a beautiful, beautiful thing. It's such a shame, man. It's such a shame.
Yeah, it is. I was absolutely floored when I heard about it. It just came from nowhere. You know, and I spoke to a few of his friends who were, you know, much kind of closer to him recently than I was. But it, you know, it's not a pissing competition. It was just, you know, we do go back a long way, and you know, he was a very quiet, sort of methodical. Maybe a little bit trouble guy, but you know, that was when he was younger. But whenever he applied himself, he was absolutely 100%
He
focused.
said it himself on this podcast, you know, when we did it with Jackie and him, just only a matter of weeks ago, which was mad, you know. He and what was cool for me, I knew we were going to, I mean, I know Sean peripherally. I mean, I'm a bit younger than your generation, you guys, and so I just knew him more from the promoting side and going to Rug Cutter. I was always spangled and just kind of, well, you know, didn't really know of his wisdom and his connecting abilities and his respect and his prowess in the Lincoln and Nottinghamshire, you know, regional, you know, like, And what I found to be really insightful when we were chatting was like when we talked about, you know, parenting, because for me, being a parent now, you know, I tend to take a lot from people's perspectives on how they see the world when they're a parent, and a lot of things Sean said really chimed with me, like the way he sees the world, the way he's integrated his kids into the world, the way he brought his children up. You know, I thought, wow, you know, this guy's a dude. You know, he knows his stuff, and he's as for all those troubles which he touched on, you know, early life, you know, had some troubles and traumas that never left him, that he struggled with, you know. Yeah, it's a damn fucking shame. But as many people have commented to me, you know, so pleased that that podcast exists, you know.
I watched it all the way through, and it was quite difficult to watch, actually. I did get emotional. Especially when he touched on things about his, you know, younger life, and you know, I know his brother as well, his older brother Mikey, and I hope he's okay as well. I'm sure he's going through a really tough time. But what I always loved about Sean was there was never any other motive from Sean other than he loved what he did. There was nothing to be gained. There was no agenda with Sean. He was just, like you said, he was a dude. He was just a really cool, focused, very knowledgeable, underrated human being. I think people who knew Sean wouldn't say he's underrated because everyone knows. Yeah,
because you're aware of who he is. Yeah,
but he, you know, he was the sort of talent, you know, in that particular.
He loved music.
Arena,
that comes through, doesn't it?
Yeah, who could have been, you know, he's as good as anyone else out there, and probably better. But he's not interested in that. He was just, you know, he was in it for in it for the love. You know, live it like you love it, and all that sort of stuff. And that's what he did. And
well, God bless to Sean and to family, absolutely. And you know, we'll nod to him. You know, it's life, man. Life comes and it goes, and it reminds us this crazy journey. This crazy journey, man.
It does.
Listen, Steve, it's been amazing to have you in here tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Sam.
It's been lovely to catch up. It's been lovely to document that kind of timeline. It's been a long one tonight, and I've really enjoyed it.
Me too. Yeah, it's been very, very, very therapeutic, actually.
Yeah. Especially now in this climate. It's lovely to just sit and talk and just let it go.
Absolutely right.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Steve.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.
Peace.
Cheers.